We also have some cricket. That's women's cricket action as Laura Wolfart will lead Team South Africa at the T20 World Cup next month. We'll bring you details around 6:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, South Africa. It's Wednesday, the 4th of September, 2024, and it's just gone 5 minutes past 6. It's good to have you with us. This is the Morning Brief, the Wednesday edition. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. A jam-packed show once again for you over the next 3 hours. I tell you what, the mornings are starting to get better. Because I must say, there was a point where I was reconsidering my options and saying, what did I get myself into in the last few days? Because my body needed to adjust to these early mornings that I'm having to put in since starting this show on Monday. But I must tell you, I'm feeling much, much better. We are opening the lines. We will be talking to you throughout the next 3 hours here on the Morning Brief. The numbers are, you can call us on 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032, but we'll also take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107, and you can start doing that. We're trying to interact with you as much as possible. We've been trying to find our flow with you over the last few days, and we've figured out that we should open up and speak to you a bit more over the 3 hours. Coming up on the show, we'll have a big focus just after 7 on the South Africa-China relationship, right? The President Cyril Ramaphosa met his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. The president is in China for the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, but also took the opportunity while there to undertake a state visit. And so there's that conversation about balancing the trade between the two countries, because as it stands right now, it is completely out of kilter, with South Africa importing far much more than it exports to China. We'll analyze that a little bit. But before 7, I'll be in conversation with the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, that is Velenkosini Hlabisa, and we'll be talking about the outcomes, the audit outcomes. In fact, it's a conversation we'll start with the minister, but also pick up after 7 and get in some analysis there. Only 13% of the country's 257 local municipalities, local district and metro municipalities getting clean audits. In fact, the Auditor General telling us that in some instances, there have been instances of regression in terms of the audit outcomes. So, I mean, there's also implications there for service delivery, and that's what the Auditor General tells us, that where the monies of municipalities are not managed properly, you will see that affecting the delivery of services. What happened over the last 24 hours? Well, you remember the conversation we started yesterday around extortion as a crime in South Africa. That was picked up in the National Assembly with the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, issuing and releasing a statement and engaging MPs on the plan. Did you watch the plan, the interaction and the debate in the National Assembly? What did you think? The Minister there, Senzo Mchunu, talking about strengthening intelligence, better coordination between national police and provincial police, as well as the local law enforcement, acknowledging the anger that is in communities out there and the levels of fear. But the opposition parties, I can tell you now, were not enthused, not impressed at all with what the minister presented by way of a plan to deal with the issue of extortion as a crime, which is seriously getting out of hand in the country. Do engage us, as I gave you those numbers. We will be taking your calls even in this hour. You also saw in the last 24 hours news of the former, and we are on YouTube, we are streaming, I'm doing air quotes here, engineer, the former PRASA engineer Daniel Mtimkulu, being sentenced to 15 years in prison for fraud, basically involving that presenting himself as someone who was a doctor and an engineer and was once hyped up as being the leading rolling stock engineer at PRASA. So there was that, but also you saw a few days ago a woman who worked, I think it was called Northern Cricket. It's called Northern Cricket Union. Yes, Northern Cricket Union. Also sentenced for fraud from the Pretoria Specialized Commercial Crimes Court. And I'm wondering, your overall impression. We've been talking about waging a war on crime, and particularly waging a war against fraud and corruption for many, many years. Are you starting to get a sense that the tide is turning? Just based on these two, but perhaps others that you will have observed, including people that have been indicted in the last few months. Are there glimmers of hope that we're getting to an age where impunity for crimes such as fraud and corruption is beginning to be pushed back? Do engage me on those, but also other issues that may be on your mind this morning. This is the Morning Brief.
It's Truck Month at Ford, and that means one thing. You save big when you upgrade to a 4x4. For a limited time only, get a Ford Ranger 4x4 from only $8,599 per month. Visit your nearest Ford dealer to get the best deal on a Ranger 4x4 from only $8,599 per month with free 4x4 driver training. TNCs apply.
They will all walk onto the pitch with victory on their minds, but the final whistle will reveal who wants it the most, who will display football brilliance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matatanta Ladies FC versus the University of Fort Hare Ladies FC on Saturday, 7 September at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Straight to it then with Ann Musa. Ann, good morning. What do you have on the diary this morning?
Well, good morning, Thulas. Well, motorists waking up to some positive news. They will be paying less for petrol as from today. You know, the petrol price decrease continuing a trend of reductions for a fourth consecutive month. And the retail price of petrol decreases by 92 cents a litre for both grades. We have reactions from political parties on plans outlined by the police minister, Senzo Mchunu, yesterday to deal with the threats posed by extortion in the country, and some parties have welcomed the news from the minister that police are taking major steps to combat extortion, while we heard the EFF's Mbuyiseni Ndlozi saying that the minister's statement on this issue of extortion is a mere public relations exercise and more needs to be done. We're also looking at the bus safety concerns that are mounting as a string of fatal crashes have happened over the last few days, and the latest crash being on the west coast, where 10 construction workers from Uppington in the Northern Cape were killed and others injured, and they were on their way to Ceres to build a solar plant when their bus rolled down the mountain slope. Action SA announcing that it's taking the IEC to court over the ANC debt settlement probe, and it relates to the ANC reaching an out-of-court settlement with Ezulwini for monies it owed them relating to the election posters last year. Action SA saying that the ANC has not disclosed where it received the money to settle the debt, as it is required under the Party Funding Act. And just lastly, President Cyril Ramaphosa will today address international investors in Beijing, and we know that he's in China, where he's expected to attend the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation Summit.
All right, thank you for that jam-packed diary, and Anne will keep you updated throughout the morning here on SAFM, and also updates throughout the day from the SABC News team.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Right, let's give you a sense of what kind of a day you're waking up to this morning and give you your traveler's weather forecast for today. In terms of the impact-based warnings, we have a yellow level 1 warning. That warning from the South African Weather Services is that damaging winds resulting in difficult driving conditions, blowing around of loose debris and rapid spreading of felt fires are expected over the southeastern parts of the Northern Cape. So that is the warning there. And also a fire danger warning. Extremely high fire danger conditions are expected over the eastern parts of the Northern Cape, the western parts of both the Free State and Northwest Province, the northern parts of the Eastern Cape, and the Beaufort West municipality of the Western Cape. So do take care in those regions where those fire danger warnings are being issued by the Weather Service. In terms of the weather then in general, in Pretoria the weather is fine with a minimum of 11 and a maximum of 28. The expected UVB sunburn index is very high. Johannesburg is fine with a minimum of 9 and a maximum of 27. Vereeniging is fine with a minimum of 11, maximum of 28. Mbombela in Mpumalanga will see morning fog patches. Otherwise the weather is fine, minimum 10 and a maximum of 28. Polokwane in Limpopo will see morning fog patches. Otherwise, it's also fine with a minimum of 9 and a maximum of 26. Mahikeng is fine with a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 29. Vryburg is fine and windy, and the temperatures ranging from 8 to 28 in Vryburg. Bloemfontein in the Free State is fine and windy with a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 30. Kimberley is fine and windy with a minimum of 11 and a maximum of 30. Uppington is fine and windy, minimum 13, maximum 28. The coastal city of Cape Town, cloudy with morning light rain. The wind in Cape Town will be light to moderate northwesterly, becoming southerly to southwesterly from the afternoon, reaching fresh at times. The minimum there is 14 and the maximum is 17, and the expected UVB sunburn index in Cape Town is moderate. George is cloudy with light rain at times from the late morning. The wind is light northwesterly, becoming light to moderate southerly to southwesterly from the afternoon, and it's a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 18. In Gqeberha, the conditions are partly cloudy, becoming cloudy in the afternoon with light and showers of rain. The wind in Gqeberha is moderate to fresh southwesterly with a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 20. In East London, it's fine, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon with light rain and showers at times from late afternoon. The wind is moderate southwesterly with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 23. In Durban, the weather is fine. The wind is moderate to fresh northerly to northeasterly, reaching strong from the afternoon. It's a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 30 in Durban, and the expected UVB sunburn index is extreme. Do take care in Durban. Richards Bay is fine, and the wind is moderate to fresh northerly to northeasterly, reaching strong from the afternoon. It's a minimum of 18 and a maximum of 32. And lastly, Pietermaritzburg is fine with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 37.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
The Warriors want to start their AFCON qualifier with maximum points. However, Harambee Stars want something delightful for the Kenyans. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Kenya versus Zimbabwe on Wednesday, 4 September at 3 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
Yeah, so for that this morning, let's focus a little bit on one of the mechanisms of international law, and that is the International Criminal Court. And that's because the effectiveness of the International Criminal Court as a mechanism to curb international law crimes is once again under the spotlight. This after the Asian country of Mongolia failed to comply with its Rome Statute obligation to arrest the Russian President Vladimir Putin upon his arrival in the country for a state visit, his first to an ICC member state since his indictment on war crimes last year. Let's unpack this story with Stephen Gruzd, who is head of the Africa-Russia project at the South African Institute of International Affairs. Good morning, Stephen, and thank you for your time this morning. Before we talk about the ICC and the implications of Vladimir Putin visiting Mongolia and what it means for the ICC, just the visit itself, your reflections on the visit. I read somewhere one of the interpretations of it, one of the certainly analysis of it was that Vladimir Putin was actually thumbing his nose at the West and the ICC.
Good morning, and thanks so much for having me. Look, Russia is looking for friends wherever it can find them. It's been isolated by much of Europe because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, and Putin is doing whatever he can to show that he's not isolated. So visiting other countries, which he's slowly started to do, is a way of saying, I still have friends, I can still travel and exert Russian influence. So this is probably quite an important country for Russia. It's there's big plans to build a massive pipeline to get Russian gas from Russia to China through Mongolia, and I think Putin sees strategic value in undertaking this state visit to this landlocked Asian country that's a big country between Russia and China.
And just to that issue then of the ICC, it has become something of a farce, has it not, Stephen? The non-compliance by member states. I was actually reading up, and I wasn't aware that the one that I could remember was the situation we had a few years ago as South Africa with Omar al-Bashir a few years ago. But I wasn't aware that actually this happened quite a number of times with other countries. The non-compliance and the failure to sign up to the Rome Statute by many of the countries in the West and the superpowers. It has become something of a farce, has it not?
Well, it's certainly put the courts under pressure because, what's the point of issuing these international warrants of arrest if your member states are not going to comply? And as you rightly said, South Africa faced this situation in 2015 when Sudanese president at the time, Omar al-Bashir, came to South Africa for an African Union meeting. And in fact, some NGOs went to court, and there was a court order that said we have to arrest him before he leaves the country, and that didn't happen. And the South African authorities helped him to leave. Of course, Putin was invited to the BRICS summit last year this time, and after a lot of worrying and concern, he was persuaded not to attend, and Minister Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, attended in his stead. And I know that DIRCO, our Department of International Relations and Cooperation, took a trip to The Hague and really, said what are the implications and what would happen. So South Africa avoided this situation with Putin when he did attend the BRICS summit. But it really does put the court under pressure, and there are no enforcement mechanisms. It doesn't have an army. But what I did read is that it may be bringing charges, that the court may bring charges against Mongolia for the non-arrest of Putin. So it is trying to assert its authority. But as you also rightly point out, there are many countries who are not members, including the United States and Russia.
Yeah.
But when you're a member, you should abide by the rules of the club that you are a member of.
Can we read anything into the timing of the visit by Vladimir Putin to Mongolia, especially coming as it does at a time when the fighting in Ukraine has intensified with missile and drone strikes on Kyiv, but also that push on the Eastern Front in the city of Pokrovsk?
Yeah, look, we've seen a big change in the war in that Ukraine has made incursions into Russian territory. And this might be a way of Putin actually saying, well, I'm not too worried about that. I'm happy to travel. As I said, I think that the big project with Mongolia is this massive pipeline to get gas all the way to China. So maybe it's a way of Putin saying that he's not concerned about the Ukrainian incursion and being arrested, and that he has friends, and that he will do what he wants. He's not fearful.
All right, Stephen, thank you. That is Stephen Gruzd, who is the head of the Africa-Russia project at the South African Institute of International Affairs, with our Worldview update here on SAFM.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's take a few of your WhatsApp voice notes, starting first with the issues to do with corruption that I raised earlier on, as well as what the police minister had to say, as well as something to do with the ANC.
Good morning, Sean from Centurion. The fight on corruption, is it turning? Is the tide turning? I don't really think so. I think just all the small fish are being caught. If you have a look at the MK party, it's all the big cronies, and they're forming a political party. So once again, it's the guy on the street who suffers, and the big guys are all going to get away. Anyway, have a fantastic morning.
Hey, Thulas and SAFM listeners, good morning. My overall impression on Mr. Mtono, the police minister, is that actually he has got no strategic plan to fight crime. As Mr. Ndrozi of EFF correctly pointed out yesterday in Parliament, otherwise the police will always react after the crime has been committed, of which that has been a spectacular failure of crime intelligence by the state. This is Andile from Stagspread in the Eastern Cape.
Morning SAFM. The ANC Youth League statement might be correct, but in actual fact, if you start sweeping, you start from home to outside. You don't start from outside and bringing the dirty inside the house. So they must start at inside ANC. The likes of Kwedemandashe, Nomvula, they are all implicated to state capture. If they can leave ANC now, they can start pointing fingers to them. But now they are quiet. And their statement is similar to that one of EFF leader Julius Malema. They will be chased away by ANC. I'm telling you. Mbalula will chase them.
All right, thank you for those, and you can continue to engage with us. As I said, the number is 086 000 2032. You can also send more WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107, and we will engage with you on those. Sean in Centurion, for example, making the point that he's not convinced that the tide is turning, despite some of the convictions, including that of Daniel Mtimkulu, the former quote-unquote PRASA engineer who was sentenced to 15 years. He basically makes the point that the big guys are getting away with it. And something has got to give that impression in as far as the prosecutorial bodies are concerned. We saw Shamila Patoi speaking, I think, at the occasion of of the retirement of the former Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, talking about the work that still needs to go into the cases around state capture that were also raised by one of the callers, one of the listeners there in one of those WhatsApp voice notes. And also Andy Lane Sterskbreit reflecting on the plan from the Minister of Police around issues of extortion. You kind of want to feel for him and say, the government of national unity in its iteration now is still new. He's new in the role, but he isn't, is he? Because in as far as the ANC certainly being involved in government, it has been 30 years. So, and these are not issues that are new. Communities have been raising these issues around extortion and just living in fear. Doctors having to close their practices, for example, in the Eastern Cape because of fear from those extortion gangs. So we will continue to engage with you. This is the Morning Brief. Let's get a quick update from the news headlines with Ann Musa.
Good morning. Thanks to Thulasizwe. The headlines chief economist at Econometrics Azar Jamin says the latest decrease in fuel prices, which took effect at midnight last night, will provide some much needed relief for motorists. The retail price of petrol has dropped by 92 cents a litre for both grades. Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts has sent the Higher Education Department officials packing, saying it needs the Minister or his deputy to brief committee members. MPs say that the Deputy Minister, Buti Manamela, is best placed to answer their questions on the National Student Financial Aid Scheme and the National Skills Fund. And the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, says 73% of crimes committed in the country, including extortion, happen in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, the highway that backs up earliest every morning in Joburg is the Mike 1, and it's backed up fairly severely today. Not only the sort of normal congestion along that route, but also a multi-vehicle four-car pile-up between Smith Street and Empire Road. So big traffic already pushing back through the Gold Reef City territory between Ormonde and Boysons. That's where you'll pick up the queue. The M2 coming through from Joe Slovo, likely the backlog as well as you try to get through Crown and enjoy that busy Mike 1 up towards that collision scene. Eskia and Pathladi in Pretoria, very heavy today. Looks like the problem is down around sort of Eskia and Pathladi and Struben. It's a big backlog of traffic. In fact, probably Eskia and Pathladi at WFN Como. That seems to be where the end of the queue is, but the backlog starts really at around Van der Hof, so that's a big one. Also, the alternative Paul Kruger looking quite slow this morning in through Capital Park. Saw that yesterday, seeing it again today. Durban, generally okay, no major incidents, just a load of roadworks around that you'll be used to. And Cape Town, the earlier crash on the N2 inbound at Robert Sobukwe has been shifted to the side of the road. Traffic is moving better, but there is some delay as you come in from Khayelitsha approaching that scene. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm alive and I'm awake.
You're alive and whoa. Oh, are you cooking on gas? Clearly.
Some great news coming out of the Paralympics in Paris, Zai, and it's a pity I don't see the focus being as much on the Paralympics as it was on the Summer Olympics, as they call them.
Right.
Yeah, but records are falling though.
Oh, it's a record-breaking morning here on the Morning Brief. I can tell you, our athletes are really swimming to success. We've got Kat Swanepoel, Nathan Hendricks, new African records. Okay, Swanepoel competed in the S5 50-meter backstroke heats, and it revealed herself that she achieved the result with a dislocated shoulder. The Johannesburg swimmer was classed up just before the Paralympics, meaning she's facing much tougher competition in her events in Paris, having previously competed in the S4 category. Now, while her time of 49.63 seconds was not quick enough to progress to the evening final, it did see her setting the new continental mark. Now, making their way through their respective finals were both Nathan Hendricks and Christian Sadie. This was a fourth final from 4 events for the 19-year-old Hendricks, who's competing at his first Paralympic Games. The Mpumalanga swimmer finished 4th in his morning S13 200-meter individual medley heat, and he progressed to the final, where he set the new African record by finishing 7th. Now, Sadie will be back in the pool this morning for the heats of the S7 50-meter freestyle, while Alani Ferreira will be in action in the S12 100-meter freestyle heats. Soccer news. Bafana coach Hugo Bruges has his full complement of players after 3 outstanding members of the final 23 arrived in camp. Elias Mokoena arrived, while Siyabonga Ngazana and Spepelo Sitole joined the rest of the group. Hugo Bruges Chargers opened their AFCON account. They'll face Uganda at home at Orlando Stadium. That's on Friday, the 6th of September at 6 p.m. They then travel to South Sudan to play their second match. That's on Tuesday, the 10th of September. Elsewhere, Phil Foden, Cole Palmer and Ollie Watkins have withdrawn from the England squad for the upcoming Nations League fixtures. Manchester City Foden, who was recently named the PFA Player of the Year, was called up by the interim boss, Lee Carsley, but could not join because of illness. Now, the Chelsea forward Palmer and Aston Villa striker Watkins, they reported to duty but were returned to their respective clubs to continue their rehabilitation from ongoing issues. Now, England face the Republic of Ireland. That's on Saturday in Dublin on the 7th of September. Rugby, Nolusindiso Boy will lead a Springbok women team laden with test experience against the Barbarian women in Cape Town. That's on Saturday. Svais de Bruin and his coaching staff added a number of new players to the match 23. De Bruin opted for Ruiz as playmaker in her debut at fly half. Webb will start at outside centre and Malinga on the wing, with Jacobs on scrum half named on the bench as she returns to the team, and that's for the first time since 2021. Let's hear now from Svais de Bruin.
It was a real honor for me to announce the team or to be involved with the team for the first 3 weeks, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited. We've got enough experience. We've got a few new players, and and they're keen. They're keen to learn, and they want to make a difference. They want to make, like the men, the Springboks proud, the women's rugby proud. Yeah, it's going to be a massive game as a curtain raiser, and we should just hope that everyone can be there and come and support our women.
Women's cricket, it's the experienced opener Laura Wolfart will lead the Proteas women's team at the T20 World Cup in the UAE from the 3rd of October to the 20th. The squad includes familiar faces like Marizanne Kapp, Sune Lewis and Ayabonga Kaka, as well as rising stars like leg spinner Seshni Naidu, earning her first national call-up. The Proteas women will face Pakistan in a T20 series ahead of the World Cup to fine-tune preparations. And finally, tennis action. The American Emma Navarro moved into the first Grand Slam semi-final of her career. She beat Paula Badosa. She'll take on the world number 2 Arina Sabalenka, who beat the gold medalist at the Paris Olympics, Zhang Ji-wen. And in the men's draw, the 12th seed Taylor Fritz, he beat Alexander Zverev. Fritz, of course, looking forward to having the American consistency in this quarterfinal action. Well, we'll look forward to more. That's sport on the SAFM Breakfast Brief. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
More updates from Zai throughout this morning here on SAFM. Let's go straight to Ndauling Lechela then with your business update. And Ndauling, I read somewhere that the story you're about to tell us out of Germany is something that has never happened before, a VW plant closure.
That's right, Tulas. Now, VW seems to be struggling to keep its head above water amid tough competition in the car market, particularly in Europe. And so for the first time in its 87-year history, VW is considering factory closures in Germany, and it's looking to end a program that has been keeping jobs safe for nearly 30 years. This has sparked a lot of pushback from unions, with many condemning the move. VW says this is part of its cost-cutting initiatives and comes as it struggles to keep up with Chinese competitors. Now, Chinese EV makers have been expanding into overseas markets and now building more factories in Europe, raising concerns in some countries that they pose a potential threat to European automakers and jobs. In an attempt to slow down this penetration, the European Union slapped additional tariffs on Chinese makers, saying they have an extra edge on European car makers because the Chinese government subsidizes apply subsidies to when they produce the cars, which has been driving the industry's growth. This doesn't necessarily seem to be working, though, with Chinese EV makers still booking profits. I mean, BYD recently announced that it will be building a new factory in Europe as it aims to get half of its car sales from global markets, thus further adding pressure on those European car makers. VW, in the meantime, says it'll be in consultation with employee reps before moving forward with these plans.
Let's stay with the theme then of cars and vehicles. The Motors Group is planning to add another car brand to its offerings.
That's right. And this comes as Chinese car makers continue to penetrate the local market as well. This has led to speculation that Motors could be adding another Chinese car brand to its offerings. The group confirmed that it's actively trying to see if it can add another vehicle brand to its portfolio and hopes it'll be able to update markets on those plans in the next 6 months. Now, Motors, being South Africa's biggest dealership, already has exposure to Chinese car makers selling the brands like Haval, and Cherry. Bets on these vehicles could turn into gains for Motors soon. Recent data from Standard Bank showing that Asian car makers have delivered sales growth in South Africa since 2022. In terms of financing, Standard Bank says the proportion of used Chinese car brands financed by the bank increased from 20% in 2022 to 36% in July 2024. Despite this, Motors didn't fare well during its annual period, reporting a 28% decline in earnings due to challenging economic conditions and a slowdown in the new vehicles sales market. We touched on this yesterday with data for July showing, for August rather, showing a near 5% decline in sales. The group is, however, positive about its prospects, citing improved spending as South Africans make use of the two-pot system and withdraw some of their funds. And when interest rates are lowered, they're expecting to see an uptick in people buying cars.
I'm not going to say anything, Dowling, with what that last sentence. The Reserve Bank governor and the SARS commissioner on Monday sounding those warnings about what you spend that money on from the two-pot system. In terms of markets, you're watching Asia with an update of what happened as well as the U.S. markets overnight.
So risk seems to be off the table, Thulas, as equity markets fall further into the red. In the U.S., Wall Street stocks tumbled as data reignited concerns around slowing growth within the U.S. We saw manufacturing data there declining, just sparking those recession fears again. Tech stocks taking the biggest beating as the Nasdaq ended the trading session 3.2% lower. Asian stocks, in the meantime, following its global peers, trading in the red today. Weak commodity prices, concerns about global economic growth, and uncertainty about the pace of U.S. interest rate cuts just weighing on those markets. Back at home, it was also a sea of red as another global sell-off is brewing. The all-share fell 1.6% in yesterday's trade. This was driven by a 3% decline in the Resources 10 complex. The local unit also being caught up in the negative market sentiment, losing ground and shrugging off the somewhat positive GDP numbers we got yesterday. It's sitting at 17.98 to the greenback.
All right. Thank you for that. That's Dowling there with your business update, and more from her throughout the morning here on SAFM.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for a 2018 BMW 320i.
Give our children a call. It's a win-win. You can't lose.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's Yusuf.
Help it out. The service was quick. Absolutely phenomenal service from our children.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online. Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
So you and I know from experience that every rand saved counts, especially in these tough economic times for consumers. Well, some good news coming from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, with all grades of petrol having come down 92 cents per litre as of today, while the different blends of diesel are set to decrease by between 79 cents and 1 rand 5 cents per litre. Let's welcome then to the conversation the Director of Fuel Pricing at the Department of Mineral Resources, and that is Robert Make. Robert, good morning. Thank you for joining me. Now, not that we ever need a reason for good news, Robert, but do take us through the factors that have landed us at this position where we have these significant decreases.
Good morning to us and the listeners. Yes, the main reason for this drop is the lower oil prices and the stronger rand against the dollar during the period under review. And also the slate levy remained unchanged, 0 cents per litre on both petrol and diesel. So Tulas will recall that this is the fourth time now in the fourth month in succession that the prices are going down. Petrol has actually dropped by about 3 rand 44 cents during this period.
Yeah, so when you look at those factors as you list them, Robert, a lot of them seem to be out of our control, as does tend to happen with these issues around the fuel price. So would there be reason for South Africans to get comfortable, or is it your sense that the reprieve could be short-lived? I imagine that you guys watch these trends over a longer period of time.
Yeah, Tulas, what we are observing now is that the rand is actually just above 17 rand per dollar. So it's stabilizing around that figure there, and influenced mainly by what happened with the U.S. Federal Reserve around their market backside the inflation and so on. But also on the oil price, we've seen that the oil price is now below $80 per barrel, and the main reason for the oil price to be at that level is mainly the overproduction from both OPEC and non-OPEC member countries. You will recall that OPEC decided some few months ago, in July actually, that they are going to cut production. But some of the members are not actually adhering to that production cut. It cannot be enforced. But we've also seen a lot of oil coming from non-OPEC members, particularly from the Americas region. And unfortunately, the global market is also not growing. Stagnation of the global market, in some cases, is also slowing down. So that's why we have the oil prices at the prices that they are currently.
Yeah, so it's a matter of, figuratively, the stars aligning and a confluence of various factors globally that are working to our favor, at least at the moment. Robert Make is Director of Fuel Pricing at the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
To this now, and I think there can be no debate that whatever the standard of performance is in whatever task, scoring 13%, 13% is an epic fail, as they say, right? Well, that's the percentage of South African municipalities who attained clean audits for the 2022 to 2023 financial year. In fact, the Auditor General telling us that only 34 out of the 257 local, district, metro municipalities received clean audits. It's possibly a case of taking some steps forward while taking a few steps back, because the AG also tells us that while 45 municipalities improved their audit outcomes, 36 actually regressed. Let's speak now to the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. That's Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa. Good morning, Minister. So the local government financial management system, I suggest to you, Minister, is broken, has been broken for some time, and it doesn't look to me, at least, that it can be fixed at this point. We've been lamenting and reporting on this once a year. It's almost like a ritual, but I suspect that a lot of people will be feeling that it's unfixable.
Good morning, Sizwe and the listeners of SAFM. Nothing is unfixable if you have a will and determination to fix it. It is true there was a regress in the audit outcome in terms of clean audit, but also there was progress in terms of the number of municipalities who improved from the bad audit outcome. And if you go to the disclaimer, which is the worst audit outcome, the number, it dropped from 22 to 12 municipalities, which should not be taken lightly, despite the drop of 4 municipalities from clean audit from 38 to 34. As you know, Caesar, the whole government in the 7th administration dedicated its efforts to local government. The president was clear that focus is going to be on the local government, because everybody realizes if you want the economy to work, you must have a working local government. If you want people to get services, they do not that much come from national and provincial. The services that are basic come from the local sphere. So our focus this time around is on local government, and every local government will have to work during this term, because we will be giving support, monitoring, and also putting pressure on them.
Giving support, monitoring, and putting pressure, what does that translate to, Minister, by way of consequence management? You say that nothing is unfixable where there's the political will, but a lot of people will be looking at examples like Ditsobotla, for example, that Ditsobotla municipality, who have not submitted financial statements for 2 years, and people will just be disheartened.
Definitely. When I say put pressure, I was using a soft term. We cannot give support with no change. If there is no change, there must be consequence management. You know, 2 days ago, I went out public that the 2 municipalities that have not been submitting the annual financial statements, one for 2 years and the other for 3 years, it is time up now. Everybody must submit. Guess what? And those 2 municipalities on Friday, they met the deadline to submit the audit outcome. So we say, this is what we want. People must respond. If they have problems, they must raise hands and say, I have a problem. We will come and support. But we cannot allow anyone not to submit AFS for 2 years and for 3 years. They did it. And we welcome it, and we will come in closer to see what is it that was submitted, where a support must be given, but the fact that at least they complied, it's a positive move. And of course, Caesar, there will be a consequence management. As I said, no one is not going to submit the audit outcome, because there are measures you can introduce to force a person, and if a person doesn't comply, tougher consequence management. There are systems in place.
Right. So just with your fresh pair of eyes then, Minister, just having been in office in this portfolio about 2 months or so, what's at the root of some of these problems that we are facing in local government?
Firstly, the skill we have. We have undertaken an audit in the dysfunctional municipalities. Who are the municipal managers there? What is their qualification? Who are CFO? Who are director, technical and corporate services? Those are key departments. If you have a wrong skill, whatever support you give, but you give to people who are not suitably qualified in those areas, we are doing audit for that. And secondly, who are the mayors? What competencies the mayors have? The speaker. Many council, you find that they take a wrong decision in a meeting presided by a speaker. If a speaker doesn't have competence and is not bold enough to say this is a wrong decision, whatever you can do, it won't help. So now, the skills, both administratively and politically, and secondly, a political will.
Right.
Political parties who govern these municipalities that are dysfunctional will have to draw a line. If a person does not perform, it is a political party that must remove that mayor or yes.
Right, Minister. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We've got to leave it there. That is the Minister for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Velenkosini Hlabisa, weighing in on the audit outcomes at local government.
Need a loan? Pay for what you need when you need it with a personal loan from Nedbank. And if you open a My Goals Plus or My Goals Premium account, you can enjoy 200 Rand cash back every month for the duration of your loan. That's 200 Rand every month to buy extra groceries or save for a rainy day. Visit nedbank.co.za and join the bank that's best for your loans. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
The Mediterranean Knights are after the big prize, a win in the opener of the AFCON qualifier. But Amavubi differs and insists on traveling back home with a massive bag of 3 points. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Libya versus Rwanda on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
All right, it's good to have you with us here on the Morning Brief. And you just heard that conversation that we were having with the Minister for Cooperative Governance, Velenkosini Hlabisa. Let's go to this story now. And this is the story to do with, it's been 5 years already since the so-called silicosis case was settled with a court-approved settlement agreement of some 5 billion Rand to be paid out by mining houses for the benefit of mine workers who contracted occupational diseases such as silicosis and TB. Let's welcome on the line Dr. Munyadziwa Kwinda, who is the CEO of the Tsiamiso Trust, who are entrusted with that process of paying out. Dr. Kwinda, good morning. How has the process of paying out the compensation been going thus far?
Good morning, Thulasizwe and your listeners, and thank you for having us. As you said, we have been in operation as the trust for 5 years now, but the compensation really started mainly in 2021, and we have so far paid 19,000 claims and with 19,200 beneficiaries to the tune of 1.7 billion.
How does that square up with the overall figure of about 5 billion Rand that was to be made available by these mining houses, but also the category of disease being silicosis and TB contracted from mine work going as far back as 1965? What you've paid out versus the global figure of what is possible?
Of course, as we are only in the 5th year of the trust is in operation until 2031. And we continue with our processes of locating as many potential claimants as possible. Indeed, the settlement is 5 billion, and we are working towards that. And in the main, we have seen that 92% of the claims that we have paid are related to silicosis, whereas 8% of the claims are related to TB. In the main, most of our claimants are silicosis claimants, and then a few with work-related TB. Remember, this has to be a work-related TB because TB is also a community-acquired disease.
Yeah. And very quickly, tell us about the challenges you are encountering. I understand that you have some challenges with the requirement that the cause of death needs to be one of these two diseases, but also, the trust deed itself in terms of, who qualifies to claim.
Yeah, that is related to deceased claims where the mine worker has passed away. Because this was a delictual claim, then there must be proof that the cause of death was either TB or silicosis. A challenge that we have is that our usual death certificates that are issued by Home Affairs do not have that information because they indicate either natural or unnatural causes. So we are finding a way to access the death notification forms that contains that information. So those are some of the challenges that we are having, especially with deceased claims, and hence we have not really paid much of those claims.
All right, I've got to thank you for that update. 1.7 billion rand already paid to more than 19,200 beneficiaries out of 19,000 claims. That is Dr. Munyadziwa Kwinda, who is the CEO of the Tsiamiso Trust, responsible for administering those payouts and compensation from that silicosis case that was settled 5 years ago. It's 7 a.m. Let's check in with Ann Musa with the latest news update.
In our top stories, fuel price relief for motorists and Deputy Minister of Higher Education snubs Scopa meeting. Good morning. Some good news for motorists as they are paying less for fuel. The chief economist at Econometrics, Azar Jamin, says the latest decrease in fuel prices, which took effect at midnight last night, will provide some much-needed relief for motorists. The retail price of petrol has dropped by 92 cents a litre for both grades. The wholesale price of diesel has declined by 79 cents, and the cost of diesel with lower sulphur has dropped by R1.05. Jamin says this is also a positive development.
But the fact that the rand has strengthened has enabled inflationary pressures to come down, and we have seen as a result this fourth consecutive month of big fuel price cuts. And the prognosis now is that the inflation rate may well fall to below 4% in the next couple of months, and that will pave the way for the Reserve Bank to cut interest rates for at least 0.5% before the end of the year. It will be the first cut in interest rates in a year and a half.
Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts has sent the Higher Education Department officials packing, saying it needs the Minister or his deputy to brief the committee members. MPs say Deputy Minister Buti Manamela is best placed to answer their questions on the National Student Financial Aid Scheme and the National Skills Fund. The department was scheduled to update Scopa on investigations into the two entities. The Auditor General found irregularities with procurement, direct payment mechanisms, as well as governance and administrative challenges at NSFAS. Recent reports pinned corruption through the National Skills Fund at over 200 million rand. The Deputy Minister apologized to Scopa hours before the scheduled meeting. The EFF MP Mazwi Blose says Manamela's snub shows no regard.
And Deputy Ministers to send us an apology not to come. It shows the disrespect that he has for the people, but also for this committee at Scopa. And obviously what makes it was that the Deputy Minister, Buti Manamela, was the Deputy Minister even in the previous administration. So he's basically perfectly placed to come in and give us an account of what was happening, because he will understand the transition from the 6th administration to here. So we are really, really disappointed, and we've asked that the chair of the committee send a strong message to him and to the Deputy President, who's the leader of government business, so that we do not inquire such going forward.
Meanwhile, the DA MP Farhat Isaac says he wants to know what plans are in place for consequence management.
Auditor General has quantified that, again, the financial statements remain irregular, and there seems to be no strong action plan as yet in terms of what the department is going to be doing in terms of accountability.
The police minister, Senzo Mchunu, says 73% of crimes committed in the country, including extortion, happen in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. He has revealed police shot and killed 4 and wounded other suspected extortionists in Milnerton in Cape Town recently. Mchunu delivered his statement in the National Assembly yesterday, outlining the police's plan of action to deal with extortion.
Police, of course, led by Ministry, are hard at work fighting these crimes on a daily basis. Among recent operations is where suspects identified through intelligence as extortionists were confronted in Milnerton in Cape Town. 4 suspects were fatally wounded in a shootout with police, while 4 were admitted in hospital with wounds and 2 ran away and escaped.
And finally, the main opposition party in Uganda says security operatives have shot its leader, Bobi Wine, in the leg. The National Unity Platform says it has been an attempt on his life. But police say Wine has hurt himself when stumbling while getting into his vehicle after a protest. He's been taken to hospital. Wine was defeated in the 2021 presidential election, but he has become one of the most formidable challengers to the long-term President Yoweri Museveni. Recapping the top story, Chief Economist at Econometrics Azza Jamin says the latest decrease in fuel prices, which took effect at midnight last night, will provide some much-needed relief for motorists. The retail price of petrol has dropped by 92 cents a litre for both grades. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Still very heavy through the crowd interchange. Crash 4-vehicle pile-up earlier this morning between Smith Street and Empire Road. That got in the way of a very busy route anyway. So backlogging from Ormonde on the Mike 1 and from Joe Slovo on the M2. N3 is pretty heavy today from Elands interchange all the way up to the Galulis. And there's a bit of drama on the R21 both ways. A crash before Ford Trekker, R21 south towards the airport, badly backed up. And a breakdown in amongst the roadworks on the R21 north before the Benoni exit. So you got a double obstruction there and quite a heavy backlog as well. Durban side, the M7 is queuing as you line up towards Pinetown. Hunt-Stedman Highway is the back of the queue, the front of the queue up around the N3. There's also a queue at Twenty Hill this morning for motorists leaving Monzamtoti area. And 2 stationary trucks have either broken down or collided into each other on Plattercliff Hill. So the run-in from Belleville just down a lane this morning as you make your way down to Plattercliff Road. Expect some delays there. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer. Temba Zwane will captain Bafana Bafana in the upcoming AFCON qualifiers against Uganda and South Sudan. And in cricket, Laura Wolfart to lead the Proteas women at the T20 World Cup in the United Arab Emirates. Details around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Wednesday, the 4th of September, 2024. It's just gone 7 minutes after 7. Good morning, South Africa. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. This is the Morning Brief. Well, an all-round strategic cooperation partnership in a new era. That is a quote. That's how the description comes through, the description between President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping during a state visit by President Ramaphosa, who is attending the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation in Beijing, FOCAC. We will unpack what this means, this all-round strategic cooperation partnership in a new era. That conversation coming up in the next few minutes. A bit later on in this hour, we will focus a bit on this the award that has been made by the Department of Transport for the service provider that will provide the technology for the new identity, the driving license cards to be produced. It's called IDEMIA, I think is the name of the company, and we're told it's a French technology company. We will get a bit more clarity about the process for the appointment of that agency, IDEMIA, and the work that they will be undertaking. This is the morning brief, and of course, is the Ideas Refinery. Put yours on the table. Let's refine the ideas. Let's stress test them and engage each other and see where we can find common ground. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. Also, your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107.
The future of education is here. Impact offers 2 paths to the future. Design your own homeschooling journey with Impact Homeschooling, or let our experienced teachers guide the way with the Impact Online School. Get quality future-forward education. Visit www.impact.co.za today to register for 2025.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
So President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have announced what they call an all-round strategic cooperation partnership in a new era. The two leaders say this partnership will be underpinned by strong political ties and focused on a prosperous future with balanced trade and transformative economic growth. But what does it all mean? For starters, South Africa would like to see its exports to China increase significantly to try and balance the scales a bit. Let's welcome into the conversation Dr. Adrian Saville, who is Professor of Economics, Finance and Strategy at Gibbs. Dr. Saville, good morning. Thank you for your time. Interesting conceptualization of the partnership, quote-unquote, all-round strategic cooperation partnership in a new era. And I note the concept of new era added in there. What do you understand it to mean?
Thulasizwe, thanks for the opportunity. I think it means, it's an explicit recognition that there are new arrangements that shape the world. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone, given the way that the world's economic plates and relationships has shifted over the last 10 and 20 years. What's critical in this reference point is the pointing to a strategic partnership. And to me, that's the essence of this proposition.
Yeah, and part of it is political, and that brings about interesting dynamics, does it not? Given what you just alluded to, the geopolitics that many other players are watching this relationship.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that there's at least two useful ways to think about the shape and nature of this relationship. The first is in terms of broad global political arrangements or alignments, and we think immediately of the BRICS or the enlarged BRICS as points of reference. And then the second is, which China is by far the biggest economic partner. And the second is the relationship with China specifically. And if we take just trade relationships as the reference point and go to the early 2000s, in the early 2000s, trade between South Africa and China made up in the order of 3, 4, 5% of South Africa's imports and exports. Today, that figure sits at 15 and 20%. So there's been a five-fold growth in the relevance of China as a trade partner to South Africa over the last 20 years. And I see no reason for that to be interrupted, barring any spectacular political and economic realignment.
Five-fold growth in the relevance of China as a trade partner for South Africa, but the balance is skewed, is it not, Dr. Saville? I mean, the statistics that I saw talk about the balance, the deficit being at about 177 billion rand in terms of what South Africa imports from China versus what it exports to China. Is it a product of South Africa underperforming on its manufacturing and natural resource exports, or is it a factor of China not really stepping up to be deliberate in importing more from South Africa?
Thulasizwe, I think we could put in a few other points there to try and explain this difference. But first, you're absolutely right that there's been no year in the last 25 in which South Africa has sold more to China than the country has bought from China. So it's a permanent deficit between the two countries. There have been patches where that difference has narrowed meaningfully, but that has been driven entirely by commodity prices, and commodity prices are outside of the hands of South Africa. So where it has closed, it's had nothing to do with either China or South Africa. It's been the result of global forces. The fact that this deficit is permanent in part is explained by the nature of the goods that we export to China, and it's almost entirely commodities, gold, platinum, diamonds, iron ore, etc. It's almost entirely commodities. And what we import from China is almost entirely manufactured, value-added goods. And there's been no change in that relationship. Now, if South Africa were to just try and push the commodity angle, we come back to the discussion about us having to fix our network industries in order to make sure that we can get from pit to port.
Yeah, that's true, Dr. Saville. It's that conversation that we've been having about the need to fix ourselves to ensure that whatever we do manufacture and export can get to port. That is Dr. Adrian Saville, who is a professor of economics, finance and strategy at the Gordon Institute for Business Sciences, GIBS, weighing in there on the South Africa-China relationship.
From 1936 to the future, from Ekhaya, Ekasi, to Jozi and Urkan to the world, from dance and poetry to stages filled with our hopes and dreams, from SABC radio stations to cross-border triumphs, from drama, comedy and heart-pounding sport to raise our flag, from culture and spirit to the streets where talent is grown, from generation to generations and the shows that kept us entertained. So, what are you waiting for? Kumbule Ekhaya. SABC has always been home to our joy, stories, and Msanti's magic. Come home to SABC Plus, still home to the best of who we are.
The Warriors want to start their AFCON qualifier with maximum points. However, Harambee Stars want something delightful for the Kenyans. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Kenya versus Zimbabwe on Wednesday, 4 September at 3 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
So if you've been with us for the past hour or so, you will have heard a conversation we had just before 7 a.m. with the Minister of Cooperative Affairs, Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. That is Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa. And I put the proposition to him that many people who have been watching and lamenting the decline in terms of performance of municipalities, particularly as it relates to management of their finances and how that relates to service delivery, some people may start to believe that the system is broken and the system is unfixable. The minister's response to that proposition was to say nothing is unfixable where there's political will, but he did indicate that one of his assessments is that the issue of skills is partly at the heart of some of the poor performance, certainly in as far as management of finances is concerned. We're talking here about 34 out of 257 municipalities, only 34 getting clean audits. Let's bring into this conversation now Dr. Helen Klute, who is an academic and research fellow in the Center for Gender and Africa Studies at the University of the Free State. And it's important, Dr. Klute, is it not, that you have done some work at the University of the Free State and identified ineffective human resources development and management as one of the key factors at the heart of poor performance at local government.
Good morning, Thulas. Good morning to the listeners. Now, for sure, we've done research last year for the local government CETA, and we looked at evidence-based systems to support, whether are we in fact measuring and managing human resource development in municipalities. We keep saying that, and a lot of organizations say that, people are our most important or most valuable asset. Besides other assets, humans are the most important, but then managers act as if that is not the case. And so what we have found in our research is that, there's a chronic lack of capacity or competence and capability to manage the development of people, which is really taken for granted.
So it's interesting that you identify the development of people as opposed to chronic lack of capacity, where usually that's where we leave the conversation to say those who are supposed to be managing these municipalities and their finances lack the skills and the capacity. But you're saying development of those skills is where it's lacking.
No, exactly. You may have acquired a BCom in 1980, and those function and those competence are now obsolete. And so we believe in this notion of lifelong learning. And so it's on-the-job learning, it's informal learning, it's learning from others. And so that culture of learning and development is, in many municipalities, that is absent. And the key actor at the municipal sphere is the manager. And if managers are not equipped with the functional competencies to manage the development of people, coaching, mentoring, being empathetic, having emotional intelligence, all of those factors make for an effective organization. You see, it's about performance, it's about accountability, it's about leadership. And those things don't come automatically. We believe in lifelong learning. You learn every day. But it's that culture that we created at local government that does not support the development of people. It's taken for granted.
How do we do that? How do we achieve the optimal outcomes in terms of human resource development at local government level, where even the senior managers, you will have seen the reports, for example, recently talking about this municipality where the metric status of the municipal manager is being questioned, and you will have seen reports around that municipality said to have spent almost R1 million on just 22 laptops.
Look, it's about, we've had in this country since 1998 the Skills Development Act, and that sets the institutional framework that looks at, a skills audit. What is it that people have? What is it that people bring to the table? Then there's a work skills plan, and millions is being spent. I'm not even saying invested, spent on training and development of people. It's the return on that investment. People go training for the sake of training, and that we need to stop. And so there isn't a strategic focus, and our research shows that we're not measuring and managing development of people. So we send people on training, and it's just training for the sake of training in most of these cases. Or we would throw training at the problem as if training is the beginning and the end all. research shows that training is the most used but the least effective. And so there are other ways in which people learn and develop. And so if we do not measure it, we know, if we talk about talent management in municipalities, if we talk about succession planning, all municipalities have an integrated development plan for 5 years that is supported by a service delivery budget implementation plan that is reviewed quarterly. That same focus is not on human resource development. So unless we break it down into department, into the finance department, and look what we have and how do we grow our own wood in that municipality, break the dependency on consultants, there is not a strategic focus on human resource development. And that is the focus of our research.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning, Dr. Klute. But before you go, just on a lighter note, did I hear correctly? Did you almost have a typically South African Freudian slip? Instead of saying throwing in training, did you almost say hoying in? And it was okay. You should have said hoy.
I said that, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Dr. Helen Klute is an academic and research fellow in the Center for Gender and Africa Studies at the University of the Free State.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's take a few more of your voice notes and hear what you have to say this morning.
Good morning, Thulas. This is Thulasizwe from Pretoria. These financial statements that some municipalities don't have to submit is why we're here. I mean, what government would allow that to happen in the first year? If it happens the first time and it allows it, it's going to happen over and over again. And there's a reason why it happens, because government knows it doesn't want any shenanigans exposed. Otherwise, it would have done something.
My name is Thulasizwe. It's Chris in Peter Maritzburg. Consequence management is very pathetic when it's only seen at one level. Provinces, especially in KZN, are not doing their job in terms of their oversight over municipalities. Before the elections, the previous administration gave relief to Umsundus, which is decaying right in front of their eyes, because that is the city where the legislature is held, and it's going down. So the minister must hold also the provincial political leadership to account and have consequences for their dereliction of duty.
Yeah, so the theme of consequence management coming through very strongly from Motlatsi and Chris, Motlatsi in Pretoria and Chris in Peter Maritzburg. And you will have heard what the minister had to say about consequence management. And I don't know how he's going to navigate that within the system that we have in our country in terms of where the lines are drawn between national, provincial and local government. But certainly it does feel like something has got to give in as far as consequence management is concerned. Andrew on the line wants to raise the aspect that has to do with skills training. Good morning, Andrew. What about skills training do you want to bring up in this conversation?
Morning there. I just didn't get the guy's name. It's Professor somebody you called him.
Yes, Dr. Klute. Klute, yes.
Yeah, he hit the nail on the head. All we're doing with these massetas and training centers is you're just churning people out with pieces of paper. Everybody, you go to a college, you just come out with a piece of paper. You go to a masita place, you come out with a piece of paper. So I've been trying to get to talk to somebody and get sense into them. I send them mails. I said, look, we are in the engineering and mechanical engineering trade for the past 40 and 45 years, and we see what's going on. And you put these kids on crash courses for 6 months and give them a piece of paper and walk around on the street. Companies look at those papers and say, oh man, please, not another one of you guys, man. They've got no practical experience, but they put them there, give them a stipend for 6 months and leave them. So I went to these colleges down here in Cape Manor. I said, guys, we learned in these colleges when we were young. The facilities are still here. We don't need any money from you guys. All we want to do is bring our practicals here, You got the students here that are doing your N3s, your N4s, 5s, and 6s. They want to do electrical. They want to do fitting and turning. They want to do boiler making and stuff like that. Let us do the practicals along with it. Because when we used to go to technical colleges, we went for 3 months to a technical college. We went back to work for 3 months. When we got out of there, we were qualified in both areas. We were theoretically qualified and we were practically qualified. That was the old apprenticeship system.
So are you saying, Andrew, that there's no balance between the theory and the practice, particularly in those trades where the practical is quite important?
Okay, let me put it to you this way. There is no one good artisan that is out of work today. The quickest way to get into mainstream is going through the route of being an artisan. And anybody can tell you that in any country. You go to England, plumbers are the highest paid. They even get paid more than the doctors. Over here, we're just turning people out of papers. We're putting them in colleges. You're putting them in, you got NSFAS funding them, and they're just floating around all over. But here's the deal. Why wouldn't anybody talk to us and be telling them, when Ramaphosa said, Tumamina, we got up. Not one email, nothing. And oh man.
So
we're telling these people, you are doing it wrong. Contact us.
Not to make light of what you're saying, Andrew. You're saying you want to respond to the call to be sent to Mamina, but they don't want to.
They don't want to.
To Tuma you.
Yeah, they don't want to. I'm hoping that somebody in your administration there would maybe take my number offline and try and hook me up with one of these guys somewhere where we can show them, guys, we need this old-fashioned trade schools like we used to do.
And artisan training. Andrew, thank you so much for your call this morning. Andrew, they're weighing in around the issue of training and provision of training.
I'd like to give somebody my number there.
We'll take your number. The team will take your number and we'll see what we can do to facilitate that
very
you
sad,
can be
man.
too
These
much.
kids
Thank you so
walking
much.
around
That's
with
Andrew
papers,
there, talking to us this morning. And that brings us to 7:30. Time for a news headlines update with Ann Musa.
Good morning. Thanks to us in the headlines, the Hawks in Limpopo have seized electronic devices, including laptops, from some municipal managers in the Thulamela municipality in Tohoyando. In a statement, the Hawks spokesperson says the devices are believed to be necessary for investigation of alleged fraud and corruption in the municipality. President Cyril Ramaphosa will today address international investors in Beijing, China. He's in China where he's expected to attend the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation Summit. And the chief economist at Econometrics, Azza Jamin, says the latest decrease in fuel prices, which took effect at midnight last night, will provide some much-needed relief for motorists. The retail price of petrol has dropped by 92 cents a litre for both grades. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Central Joburg remains a mess. An earlier 4-vehicle pile-up on the Mike 1 north before Empire Road. The Mike 1 this morning from Ormonde is heavy. Big queues coming in from Benrose on the M2. And then a lot of sort of alternative route action going on. Boyson's up through Selby and towards Lutuli House territory in the CBD. That is solidly jammed. Others diverting up sort of Joe Slovo, causing delays through Doornfontein and up again through the Wilds on Houghton Drive as you look for alternative routes. So the Mike 1 north and the M2 west are heavily backed up, trying to get through the Crown Interchange. Also a crash coming into the airport on the R21 just by Ford Trekker Road. And that's quite a big delay just after the Benoni exit this morning. Durban, the M7 into Pinetown looking quite heavy. There's looks to be a breakdown before you get to the N3. So from North D, North Park, you'll get around Huntsteadman Highway territory. That section of the M7 going very slowly. Quebec this morning, still got the one-lane open situation on the N2, Blue Water Bay down towards Settlers Way. So that's heavy again. There's a bit of traffic on the Cotswolds as well, coming from the Cape Road side around towards the sort of Uitenhage Road exit, if you like. That that run through the Cotswolds towards Deal Party very slowly. And Cape Town, 2 trucks have collided on the N1 inbound approaching Plattercliff Road, coming through Belleville down the hill. You're down a lane this morning, so just factor in some queue time there. And the R300 looking busier than normal with queues passing Cales River up towards the Old Paarl Road exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, I've got to tell you, I've got all the time in the world for Hugo Bruce. Since his first media briefing, and where he was talking about, if I don't qualify for the tournament, then you can kill me.
Yeah,
he's I've just had a sport for the guy.
I also have a big spot for him because he's just put his money where his mouth is.
Absolutely.
And delivered. And we are now sure that our new captain, Themba Zwane, our local Bafana Kaufela, always reliable, always flying the flag high. And I think he's going to be, keeping us in good hands. And that's when we are coming up for the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier matches. And Zwane is a key playmaker. He'll lead the team against Uganda at Orlando Stadium come the 6th of September, and then again at South Sudan on the 10th of September. And I think Bafana, as well as the team, eager to secure crucial points in these qualifiers. Staying with soccer, Kaizer Chiefs head coach Nasruddin Nabi has expressed his excitement securing the services of Bafana midfielder and the club's development product in Jabulo Blom, who's back on loan from Major League Soccer side St. Louis City SC. The Blom played 37 matches for St. Louis City, mainly under former Chiefs left back and Bafana international Bradley Carnell. But after Carnell's departure, he found it difficult to get some game time under the current coach John Hackworth. But Nasruddin Nabi says the 24-year-old's international experience with Bafana will also benefit the team.
J'espère que le deal va se faire aujourd'hui. Je suis très content. C'est un joueur, d'abord c'est un enfant de club. Il a beaucoup d'expérience et j'estime que c'est un top player. Et c'est ce genre de joueur que je vais avoir dans mon équipe.
Great player, top players, very experienced players with national team experience. He knows the club very well. I like him.
On to cycling now. Green jersey holder Wout van Aert had to abandon the Vuelta a España after crashing on stage 16 as Spanish rider Marc Soler won a tricky mountainous stage. UAE Team Emirates Soler finished 18 seconds ahead of the Italian Filippo Ganna to claim his stage win. Meanwhile, the general classification leader Ben O'Connor managed to narrowly cling on to his advantage over Primož Roglic, but is now just 5 seconds ahead in the standings. And cricket, South Africa announced its squad for the upcoming ICC T20 World Cup, and that's to be held from the 3rd of October to the 20th. Laura Wolfart named as captain, and the 25-year-old is set to lead her country for the first time in an ICC cricket event. Sune Lewis, who led South Africa to the final of the T20 World Cup last year, continues to be an integral part of the team. Other seasoned players in the squad include Marizanne Kapp, Chloe Tryon, Nadine de Klerk, Tasman Brits, Ayabonga Kaka, as well as Nonkululeko Mhlaba. South Africa's T20 World Cup squad will feature a 3-match T20 series that will be against Pakistan, held from the 16th to the 20th of September. Here's Proteas batter Tasman Brits looking ahead.
At the end of the day, you play the game to become the best in the world. You don't just play it just to reach a benchmark. I mean, if you just had to go to the final, I mean, there's no exciting things in that. You want to win. You want to be the world's best, and you want to be the team that's the team to beat. I mean, like the Australians. So, person doesn't want to look for excuses, but we actually kind of in, like, I wouldn't say building phase, but we are trying out new things. We've got a lot of youngsters are also coming up.
And tennis action, the American Emma Navarro moved into the first Grand Slam semi-final of her career, beating Paula Badosa 6-2, 7-5. Navarro will take on the world number 2, Arina Sabalenka, who had a 6-1, 6-2 win against the number 7 seed Zhang Jiwen, the gold medalist at the Paris Olympics. And the 12 seed Taylor Fritz, he edged the 4th seed Alexander Zverev, and that's making his first maiden Grand Slam, and looking forward to taking on either it will be one of the Americans, and that will be due for finally, we'll find out later today. Now, although Fritz and Zverev were equally matched for the 3-hour 26-minute encounter, the Americans' consistency prevailed in the 7-6, 3-6, 6-4 victory. Here's Fritz.
The way I came out
today was different because I just been in this situation enough times, and I think a question I got asked pretty much every time I lost in my quarterfinals was, what's it going to take to go further? And the answer I gave was always just keep putting myself in these situations, and I'll become more comfortable in these situations and get better. And, that's definitely what happened now.
More sports at the top of the hour. On the morning brief, I'm Zai Khan.
The business update on SAFM.
And Dowling has that business update for you this morning. Dowling, in this hour, you're focusing a bit on retail, starting with ShopRite. They continue to gain market share in this country.
Yes, Tula. So ShopRite, including some of its other brands, Checkers and Usave, remain a favorite among local shoppers. During the group's full-year period, it managed to deliver a 12% rise in revenue, translating to a 7% increase in earnings. Now, this comes as South Africans spent over 21 billion rand more at its stores, resulting in a stronger hold of the market. The retailer has more than 31 million consumers who use its extra savings card. This is just under half of the country's population. And I must say, I'm one of those 31 million consumers that carries around that extra savings card to get discounts.
Yeah.
Now, to penetrate...
I don't, by the way.
That,
too many cards.
Why? Oh, we have to have a conversation about this. Now, to penetrate the market even further, the company's CEO, Peter Engelbrecht, says the group is eyeing growth from the township and rural economy. That's as it plans to double its Usave brand in over the next 5 years. Usave is the group's lower-end brand, and it currently has around 463 stores across the country. There are plans to build about 540 new stores. The group noted that some consumers tend to go to their bigger ShopRite stores during month end, but come mid-month, they visit Usave stores because they are within walking distances, targeted, of course, at townships and rural areas. Now, in a note, Nedbank says that ShopRite is well positioned to dominate the township market with 700 billion rand due to its clear strategy and 3 brands that cater to different customers.
Sticking with a related development around ShopRite, its furniture business is set to be acquired by Pepco.
That's right. Now, Pepco is looking to expand its offering in the furniture segment, and ShopRite is streamlining its operations, focusing on its core businesses. And so this deal works for both companies. It's worth 3.2 billion rand and accounts for 4% of Pepco's market share. This transaction will see Pepco pick up brands like OK Furniture and House and Home. The deal, however, excludes operations in Angola and Mozambique. The transaction is expected to be completed by mid-2025 and will give Pepco over 400 new furniture stores. The furniture business will complement Pepco Lifestyle, which already holds legacy brands like Russell's, Bradlows, and Rochester. Yesterday, I spoke to Thulasizwe Simelane, who is an independent analyst, just to get a sense of what traders think about the deal. And he was quite upbeat about it, saying it'll work in Pepco's benefit and that the addition of these brands might help it position itself better against growing competitors like the Foschini Group, who house furniture brands like At Home and Quarrycraft.
Yeah. Give us a sense then of how it's looking with Asian markets and U.S. futures.
Now, starting off in Asia, those stocks slumping the most since the sell-off we saw last month. Markets are tracking a sell-off in the U.S. that was driven by a plunge in NVIDIA, which has spilled over to Asian tech stocks. With that, we're seeing Japan's Nikkei taking the biggest hit, losing over 3%, followed by a 1.2% decline in Hong Kong's Hang Seng. Over in Wall Street, futures in the red. Market participants have highlighted that stock markets usually underperforms in September as investors start booking profits. So while sentiment is downbeat, traders are confident a recovery will come soon. Moving over to local markets and the rand, both being hit by that risk-off sentiment. The JSE all-share losing 1.6% in yesterday's trade, and the rand edging closer to the 18 rand mark, sitting at 17.98 to the greenback.
All right, Dowling Lechala there with your business update here on the Morning Brief on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM.
And for that, let's go straight to Sipho Mantula. Good morning, Sipho. Raz, Algeria is going to elections, but, there are no surprises that are expected there.
Refreshing morning to the listeners, Jumbo Africa. Indeed, when you look at this election report update this morning, we are looking at Algiers that over this weekend on Saturday, there's presidential elections. Despite challenges, there have been protests for almost 100 weeks now in Algiers. Tebboune might be coming for a second term, but there are opposition parties who might not even participate in this coming elections. We know how Algeria has been having a posture on the conflict in the Middle East, the question of Western Sahara, and there are many issues when you look at Algiers so far, and there's never been a smooth transfer of power. So we'll wait and see what will happen on Saturday. AU might there's an observer mission of the AU and the EU who will be monitoring those elections come Saturday.
Yeah, and in fact, no surprises. The fact that we are focusing so much on elections in this Africa update, Sipho, because this was a big year for elections around the globe. It's also the same situation in Botswana. My goodness, has it been 5 years already since President Mokgweetsi Masisi was elected?
Absolutely, and yesterday he has already now pronounced the date that the 30th and the 31st of October, Botswana will now decide, and tomorrow it will be the last day of the parliament. We're having few opposition, those who were there in 2019, you'll remember Duma Boko, UDC, and there are many others who are coming up in Botswana. Remember that Gaborone also, since Masisi came into power, there have been contestation between him and the former president, Ian Khama. They've been having tussle and tensions, intelligence reports, going exile, coming back, but also the issues of corruption, nepotism during the period of Khama that Masisi has been dealing with. So Botswana decides in October on the 30th and the 31st.
So while President Mokgweetsi Masisi, is looking for a second term, is it time to exit the stage for the Mozambican president, Filipe Nyusi?
No, definitely. When you look at Filipe Nyusi, it is his last term, actually. When there was a SADC summit in Zimbabwe last month, it was his farewell by the SADC heads of state. Now, Chapo is taking over. Now, Daniel Chapo from Frelimo is the candidate, and Renamo has got Usuf Momade as the candidate. They've started already with the campaigns because Mozambique is going for the elections in October as well on the 9th. Now, Chapo at the age of 47 has been making some moves to Angola, Tanzania, Rwanda, Zimbabwe. Others are saying he's building his network in case he wins this election. But they'll be very tough as well when you look at the Mozambican elections, looking at the candidates also that have come through after the passing of Alfonso Dhlakama from Renamo.
And now here's a line that not many people have gotten to say, at least in the past 3 or 4 decades. The president of Zimbabwe will leave office upon the end of his second and final term in office.
That question came through. I remember that Dambuza Mnangagwa is in Beijing, it's in China now. So that question came and say, are you going to retire when your term expires in 2028? And he said, in his answer, he said, I already know the date I will leave the office and go home. Meaning Mnangagwa insists he won't run for the third presidential term. He says there are gossips that are now going around that he wants to extend his term in office, but he says come 2028 he will not be back in office since he's on his second term. And remember, Thulas, their constitution, section 95, particularly talks about running for office for 5 years. So there's not more than 2 terms that Mnangagwa can come back into office.
Yeah, in fact, those terms of office were a big talking point. I was covering the processes to draft that constitution. We don't have time to get into that. I attended the public hearings, but I can tell you a whole story there, Sipho. Lastly, you're going back all the way to 2002. My goodness, the World Summit on Sustainable Development, way before the issues of sustainability gathered the kind of traction that they now have. It was held here in South Africa.
Absolutely, and remember it was in Gauteng, and now what happened here 22 years ago was that the UN's then Secretary of the State, Colin Powell, was heckled by activists on the closing date, which was today, because that World Summit started on the 26th of August, concluding on the 4th of September. Now they were heckling Colin Powell on the issues around climate change, the US not willing to deal with the harmful of the environment. So that's how Colin Powell was heckled, the booing, slapping, and the catcalls that came from the audience during that closing ceremony that was in Gauteng. Asante sana, Thulas, as we are still in the conversation, SAFM observing the Heritage Month.
Thank you so much. That is Sipho Mandula there with the Africa update here on the Morning Brief.
The Warriors want to start their AFCON qualifier with maximum points. However, Harambee Stars want something delightful for the Kenyans. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Kenya versus Zimbabwe on Wednesday, 4 September at 3 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
So this is a bit concerning. You will have seen news that a court interdict has had the effect of affecting the digital platforms of the Unemployment Insurance Fund and basically leading to a bit of a snarl up in as far as services are concerned. There was a warning that was issued by the Department of Employment and Labour that this could lead to disruption as well as needing to deploy extra capacity. Let's find out how it's playing out. The UIF Commissioner, Teboho Maruping, joins me now to talk to us about this. We cannot overemphasize and even exaggerate, Commissioner Maruping, the importance of the UIF system, given who the beneficiaries are. It comes at a point when people absolutely need it, but when the system is clogged up because of the suspension of digital platforms, it does cause problems, doesn't it?
Oh, big time it does, Thulasizwe. I mean, in many ways, this is unfortunate, and it's an inconvenience for both the UIF and the public, because we were trying, as I find it, to move out. We are trying to move away from people coming to the offices physically and being processed or serviced by a warm body. We want people to use online platforms, digital technology, because we're in that environment. And this court case actually just takes us a few steps back in terms of digital technology.
Let me just understand, did you seek to be involved in this as a party, to be joined in? Were you joined in as a party to make the point that you are making and other points and bring them to light, or were you just as surprised? And I ask you this because I saw a report that says, quote unquote, it's an unnamed service provider. And I was puzzled. I thought you would know the name of this service provider and why they are being interdicted.
Oh, no, of course. I know the names of both service providers. I think because it's a legal matter, I need to be careful what I say in public and who I name. I think that's the challenge. I know both of them. The one service provider was giving us maintenance and support for the e-filing platform, and the other one is a new one. In simple terms, the old service provider's contract ended. We went out on a tender, and in the tender, the old service provider didn't win the tender, and the new one was brought on board. We signed the contract. Just as work was beginning, and I mean, we're just even starting to introduce a few things new, then we're interdicted in court. And the court issued an interim interdict to say, don't use this service provider until the court case is finalized. And that's the nature of the South African space. People have rights, and it's a business. People have a right to challenge if they believe that maybe the process didn't do them well. I mean, that's how South Africa functions.
Yeah, so that process will play itself out then. But in the interim, what is the impact? I saw reports of queues at those centers, service centers, and already we are dealing with a system where stories of people waiting for months for UIF payouts, including people who are going on, maternity leave, for example, having to wait for many, many months. That was already the situation. I can only imagine how much worse it must be at the moment.
It's actually a difficult state for us. because now people that we were keeping away from queues will have to come to the labor centers. But we've ramped up the number of people that are servicing. We are also extending our working hours up to 6 in the evening, from 7:30 until 6, that people can come and be serviced. But we've introduced interim technological innovation to make sure that processing happens fast. So when you come to the center, we process directly into the system, and later on in the evening we process the documentation and scan them through. So don't do the scanning and digitization during the day. That enables a speedy processing. In fact, I received a report from on the centers yesterday that they were able to clear the queues by 2 in the afternoon. So the system seems to be working so far with ramped up capacity in the labor centers.
All right, Commissioner of the UIF, that is Deboho Maruping, giving us an update there about the inconvenience that has been caused by an interim interdict that has been obtained by some service providers for the UIF.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very busy at Pretoria on SKM Patladi from Vanderhof all the way down to sort of Boom Street. So the run into Marabastan approaching the CBD is heavy. Also the run through Gazina on Stibiko Jon Haynes is pretty heavily backed. And you will be asked to queue this morning on Solomon Mshlanga around the N4 bridge. That's coming out of Mamelodi and interestingly going into Mamelodi as well. Four ways just generally busy. Loads of traffic lights, long-term faults in the four ways area. Lots of your major routes are under pressure. Republic Road out of Randburg, very heavy this morning, heading into Sandton. Big queues from central Randburg all the way through to the Winnie Mandela Junction. Very heavy there. We saw it yesterday, seeing it again today. And the run through the Crown interchange in Joburg remains heavy. Mike 1 from Ormonde, M2 from Ben Rose. It's an earlier big multi-vehicle pileup by Empire Road. And a lot of the alternative routes are full of diverting action. Joslova and Heidelberg Road up through Dorenfontein and Parkland. And also particularly Boysons Road in through Selby, avoiding the Mike 1. That's quite a heavy queue. Crash approaching the airport this morning on the R21 South. Just by 4 Trekker Road. That traffic back through Pomona and back towards the Benoni exit. Make sure you've got a ton of time to get through that for your flight connections. Pinetown's M7 remains heavy from Hunstedman all the way through over St John's Avenue Bridge territory. N3 from Pavilion Mall into Spaghetti Junction looking fairly busy. And Cape Town today, a bit of a standout on the Baden-Powell Drive. No traffic lights at the N2. So if you're going up towards Stellenbosch or coming down towards Khayelitsha side, it's heavy queues both ways there. And a truck crash on Plattercliff Hill, just taking you down the lane, left lane closed as you're coming from the Belleville side down the hill towards Plattercliff Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Cervical cancer is the leading cause of cancer-related deaths among South African women. This is heartbreaking because cervical cancer is highly preventable through HPV vaccination and regular pap smears. Pap smears are a bit uncomfortable but painless, doesn't take too long, and detect abnormal cells before they become cancerous. Women aged 21 and older should book a pap smear at a Cancer Association of South Africa care center. Call 0800 22 6622 for info. This is an SABC supported initiative.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
In fact, let's take a few of your calls on the topics we've covered this morning, as well as any other issues that are exercising your mind this morning. And Vusi in Midrand. Vusi, you want to speak about Solima Paila. You're talking about that spat between him and the ANC, particularly its Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula?
Mr. Thulasizwe.
Good morning to you, Vusi.
Morning. So
yes.
Look, man, the issue of Solima Paila, it came out very, very scathing towards the ANC, and in particular to President Ramaphosa, to say President Ramaphosa is presiding over a neoliberal capitalist agenda. Because within the ANC, even when he described his discussionist narrative in the podcast, they say the ANC of Ramaphosa took a posture of a capitalist whereby they've allied themselves with the capitalists to undermine the liberation movement. And instead of choosing the leftist forces, they choose the racist DA, of which by and large I'm not a fan of Solomon Paila to start with, but by and large I agree with him that this GNU has nothing to do, it has done nothing to black people. Instead it has brought much misery as we are speaking currently now. Look the level of unemployment, poverty, and inequalities, more especially in the township and villages. Look, currently as we are speaking, the regime of Ramaphosa is busy pushing the agenda of the white monopoly capital and the Stellenbosch mafia in particular.
How exactly, unpack it for me, how exactly is the quote-unquote regime of Ramaphosa pushing the Stellenbosch agenda?
Let me unpack it for you further. Yes. Look, currently as we are speaking, the SOEs, almost all, if not a few, which are remaining, almost all, have went to the heads of the white monopoly capital. You can take them, your PRASA, your SA, your DNL, your ESCOM, you name them, your post office, you have been just talking about all of them. They've went the same trajectory, the same route. What's fair that put the nail in the coffin? Look, currently the issue of the two-pot system is the one which currently the pensions, we are not even sure.
Yeah.
State employees now, they're even scared about their future pensions.
All right,
because no one is coming out to say, yes, a stance of government. People have been asking to say, why not David Masondo come as the minister to say,
I heard you,
here is the position of government. Thank you.
Let me squeeze in Siyabonga in KwaZulu-Natal. Siyabonga, you want to talk about the audit outcomes?
Yes, I just want to, good morning to you and the listeners, to refine our conversation by clarifying that in terms of the Public Act, there is nothing called clean audit. There are three audit outcomes. It's unqualified, with matters of emphasis or no matters of emphasis, and then there's a qualified, and then there's a disclaimer. The way we've been engaging as the country, it's like if you've obtained unqualified audit, you're not good enough, and that's not correct. I just wanted to say that yes, there is a problem in local government, but out of the 256 or 57 municipalities, those that have been able to obtain unqualified audit opinion, it means that the matters are headed correctly there. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that crisp and clear weighing in on the audit outcomes at municipalities and bringing us to 8 o'clock and time for a news update with Ann Musa.
In our top stories, Hawks seize electronic devices at Thulamela municipality and a fuel price relief for motorists. Good morning. The Hawks in Limpopo have seized electronic devices, including laptops, from some municipal managers in the Thulamela municipality in Thohoyandou. In a statement, the provincial Hawks spokesperson, Litunia Morwa, says the devices are believed to be part of the investigation of alleged fraud and corruption in the municipality. No arrests have been made. President Cyril Ramaphosa will today address international investors in Beijing, China. He's in China, where he's expected to attend the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation Summit. Ramaphosa has in the past few days been engaging Chinese companies to encourage them to invest in South Africa.
We are grateful that a number of your companies have been playing a role in improving our energy system in South Africa. But we want to encourage your companies to do much more in South Africa. And one of the key areas where we have focused on reforms is in our energy and electricity sector.
Some good news for motorists as they are paying less for fuel. Chief Economist at Econometrics Azad Jamin says the latest decrease in fuel prices, which took effect at midnight last night, will provide some much-needed relief for motorists. The retail price of petrol has dropped by 92 cents a litre for both grades. The wholesale price of diesel has declined by 79 cents, and the cost of diesel with lower sulphur has dropped by R1.05. Jamin says this is also a positive development.
But the fact that the rand has strengthened has enabled inflationary pressures to come down, and we have seen as a result this fourth consecutive month of big fuel price cuts. And the prognosis now is that the inflation rate may well fall to below 4% in the next couple of months, and that will pave the way for the Reserve Bank to cut interest rates for at least 0.5% before the end of the year. It will be the first cut in interest rates in a year and a half.
Al-Jama MP Shamima Salih has welcomed police efforts to deal with extortion in the country, but says they are concerned they're dragging their feet in arresting perpetrators. Salih, who participated in a debate on extortion in the National Assembly, responded to Police Minister Senzo Mkunu's statement. Mkunu outlined the police plan of action to deal with the threat of extortion in the country. Salih says the seriousness of extortion should not be underestimated.
We can see that the reality of extortion, the situation is far more serious than is perhaps realized. It has infiltrated not only various levels of businesses such as construction, coffee and spaza shops, minibus taxis industry, private transportations, etc. These extortion economies are interlinked, and they use extreme violence and hitmen to carry out the deadly attacks on innocent people who refuse to pay their protection fees. While Al-Jama notes the recent efforts being made by SAPS, we question as to why they've been dragging their feet in apprehending these criminals. SAPS know who the gangsters, drug dealers, the mafias, extortioners are.
Meanwhile, Rise Mzansi's chief whip Makashule Gana has described extortion as a pandemic that's spreading like wildfire in the country.
The police must prevail. They have to prevail because we are not safe. They have to prevail because businesses are not safe. The police have to prevail because pensioners are not safe. Communities are not safe. The extortion gangs and rackets are terrorizing all of us. Doctors running practices are being targeted. Informal traders are a target. Spaza shop and small businesses are a target, including construction sites that have become battleground. This has become a pandemic. It is spreading like wildfire, or even COVID-19. It's no longer just an urban or city pandemic. It has spread to deep rural areas of our country.
Recapping the top story, the Hawks in Limpopo have seized electronic devices, including laptops, from some municipal managers in the Thulamela municipality in Thohoyandou. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Coming out of Pretoria for flight connections to Tambo on the Joburg side this morning. Make sure you got some extra time to get through. There's been a crash by 4 Trekker Road. That's the exit before you get to the airport, and it's still very heavy back through the Pomona Road junction. Other side of the road, there's a really big backlog on your way away from the airport towards Pretoria as you hit that double lane closure section between Pomona Road and the Benoni exit. Republic Road across the William Mandela coming out of Randburg stays very heavy, and a whole pile of congested routes around central Joburg this morning, particularly on the southern side. It all sort of stem from that big multi-vehicle pile-up on the Mike 1 at Empire Road. It looks like that's being cleared, but Mike 1 North, M2 West coming through from Denver, Boyson's Road up through Selby, the bottom of the CBD, Joe Slovo Drive through Dorenfontein. It's all very heavy backlogging going on there this morning. Into Durban, the N3 is unusually slow. You're going to sit from Pavilion Mall through towards Spaghetti Junction. And Cape Town today, quite a bit of pressure on Marine Drive. We're queuing still between Bayside Mall and the paddocks down at Racecourse Road. And then it gets pretty heavy, heavier than normal as you line up from Lagoon Beach territory, Milnerton, all the way through Pardon Island. Midweek is a big office day, so a lot of extra traffic on the routes today, and you can see that around Cape Town. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's rugby. Elrich Lowe shines for the Boks as he cements his place ahead of a rematch with the All Blacks. And we have news from the Paralympics. Team South Africa, they've set African records. We'll find out more around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, South Africa. You're listening to the Morning Brief. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. It's good to have you with us on this Wednesday morning. We are into the third hour of this edition of the Morning Brief. And in this hour, there are a few points that we'll be seeking explanations about in the next, 50 minutes, thereabouts, that's remaining of the show. For starters, we'll be seeking explanations around the appointment of the French multinational IDEMIA as the preferred service provider to produce South Africa's driver's licenses, ID card style driver's licenses. That announcement coming from the Department of Transport a few days ago, but question marks already being asked about IDEMIA's appointment while certain alleged irregularities are being investigated for their contract with the airports company South Africa. Colin Msebi will speak to me shortly. We'll also tell you a bit about this. It's a bit heartbreaking, actually, this story that's playing out in Namibia, where officials in that country, in trying to deal with the situation of a drought and how it's affecting wildlife, they've now resorted to a cull of some animals, in fact targeting about 723 animals. As you can imagine, it is an issue that has caused quite a significant amount of debate. We'll have a conversation about that in our science feature. And then later on, we will tell you about how the process of getting a person declared a delinquent director works, right? In our Explain and Verify feature. You will remember yesterday when we were talking about Transnet, suggestions being made that some of the leaders, the past leaders of Transnet, are responsible for where we are today, and therefore will need to be, someone will need to approach the courts rather, and ask for them to be declared delinquent directors. We'll tell you how that works exactly. You're listening to the Morning Brief on SAFM.
The cost of living crisis is real. Here's what one OUTsurance client did about it.
I'm Amy. I'm 26 from Kenilworth. When I got my 2022 Ford EcoSport, the immediate thought was to buy an OUTsurance, and I pay only 819 Rand per month. No insurers were able to beat or match the premium that I'm currently paying.
Want a car insurance premium that will blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote, and to find out about included benefits like panic assistance that sends the nearest medical or armed response unit to you wherever you may be 24/7. Here's Yusuf.
45 years old from Tegendal, Western Cape. I pay 700 Rand for my Polo 1.6 2021 model. If you haven't called OUTsurance yet, definitely get in touch.
Give it a go. SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
The Warriors want to start their AFCON qualifier with maximum points. However, Harambee Stars want something delightful for the Kenyans. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Kenya versus Zimbabwe on Wednesday, 4 September at 3 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
So you would have seen an announcement from the Department of Transport a few days ago announcing that the French multinational company, its subsidiary at least, its South African subsidiary, IDEMIA has been identified as the service provider to start producing the next generation of driver's license cards. Well, it's led to a fair amount of debate because that appointment comes as certain investigations are on the go around alleged irregularities involving IDEMIA at the Airports Company, South Africa. Let's welcome Colin Msibi, who speaks on behalf of the Department of Transport. Colin, you made the announcement a few days ago, the decision having been taken earlier on in August that this would be the appointment. Firstly, before we get into the controversies, give me a sense of why IDEMIA. You're saying you had other bidders. What swung it in favor of IDEMIA?
Well, good morning and thanks for having us on your show. Well, that is the nature of the bid. The service providers, once you choose a preferred bidder, it means you have gone through a process of the tendering and obviously looking at the adjudication and evaluation of the bids that you received. As you rightly put it, we've got 5 that we received, and there was only one, which is IDEMIA South Africa, which was a preferred bidder. So hence we're sitting with that particular appointment at this point. So basically the issue is that we had a bidding committee which was looking at this matter. So it's not like we're all involved in the bid. So they have to sign even to pledge for confidentiality when they undertake that process.
Yeah, but what are the highlights of what made them the preferred bidder? What do they bring that the other 4 bidders did not have?
I suppose they are superior in terms of the technology that we need. So it would have been probably the technical aspect of the bid, so which tended to be more superior than others. So there were a number of others. These are issues, as I say to you, are confidential issues which are part of the bidding process. I wasn't part of the bidding committee, so I can't go into the details in as far as what else did they look at.
So as far as the superior technology is concerned, what will it mean for South African driver's licenses?
Well, it simply means that the card that we're going to have, it's going to be on par with the international cards that are there. And basically that's the reason why we've had to undertake this process. The cards we have, as you can imagine, we started with it in 1998. It's 26 years later. And we are moving with the times. Even the technology does move. So we've had to look at how can we improve the features that we have on this particular card so that it is bulletproof from any corruption and counterfeiting. But secondly, the country has a crisis at the moment. As we speak, there is 380,000 cards that are on the backlog in terms of the printing. Why? Because the machine that we have currently has problems. It has serviced us for over 26 years, but the issue is that its year is very much advanced. So we can no longer be able to continue with that kind of machine. But secondly, it is the only machine that we have as a country. We do not have any backup. So we've had to look at how can we improve the system that we have currently.
But now to the heart of the controversy now, Colin. Why appoint a company that is embroiled in a controversy with another state-owned entity contract at AXA there, where the investigations are underway in terms of how they scored that particular contract with AXA? You were surely aware by the time you made this decision to appoint IDEMIA that this was pending investigation.
Not correct. We're not aware. The appointment was done on the 8th of August. We got to find out, we're informed on the 27th of August that there is a termination of the contract. Secondly, the issue, we are told, this is a relationship that went sour. This is a fight between an SMME and IDEMIA. So these are guys that are fighting amongst each other because of whatever has happened in their relationship. That is why they are in court. So secondly, once you appoint, you have to publish that appointment. You say we've appointed so-and-so. For 7 days, it must be in the government portal so that the whole country knows who has been appointed. We did that. So now, what has been said by many, including AA, is that we should then put everything on hold. How do you then go back to the guy you said you are the preferred bidder and say, look, we are putting you on hold because we are being investigated at the AXA because of your relationship with your SMME. How do you then defend that? Because you are then opening up yourself for litigation, basically. So it becomes very difficult. But what we are saying, though, is that this process still has to undergo the audit by the Auditor General. We are also guided by the National Treasurer on this matter, the Chief Procurement Officer. If there's any wrongdoing which affects this particular contract, we would obviously be guided by those institutions, including, especially the Chief Procurement Officer, in terms of what should happen.
Yeah, so this is not giving you pause for reflection, the fact that it has come to the point where the contract with AXA has actually been terminated. I hear what you're saying, that losing bidders, there'll always be that conflict with them. But when it reaches a point where the contract has to be terminated, that would be pause for reflection, would it not?
Well, the issue is that if they are found to have done something, we need to establish how does it link to what we've done as a department. I think that needs to be established, and hence we are saying the Auditor General is also involved. I mean, the AA, they say they're going to report this to the Auditor General. I mean, in any case, the Auditor General was going to look at this bit. It's not like it wasn't going to look at it. So we are saying our attitude is that we will have to be guided by those processes. Our probate process, it cleared us. It say that we complied with the legislation and the policies.
All right.
So we would have to see what the Auditor General says on this matter. We are not saying we are turning a blind eye on what is happening at AXA. But from what we are hearing is that this is a love tiff between SMME and Dame Idemia, and therefore we are saying it has no bearing in terms of what we have done up to so far. But if indeed it comes to a point where it does, we rely on the custodians of these processes, and that is Treasurer and the Chief Procurement Officer, and we'll take guidance from them.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. Fair enough. That's the Department of Transport's spokesperson, Colin Msebi. You get the sense that this contract will be under intense scrutiny, and rightly so.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
So authorities in Namibia have come to the distressing decision, really. The cabinet taking a decision that part of their response to a drought that is engulfing parts of the country, they needed to authorize a cull of wildlife. And we're talking here some 723 animals, including hippo, buffalo, impala, and blue wildebeest and zebras among them, and 83 elephants, we are told. What is the science behind it, behind the drought that we are seeing in parts of Namibia, but also the science around the balancing of the conservation considerations of the cull? I'm joined for that conversation by Professor Guy Midgley, who is climate change researcher and acting director of the School for Climate Studies at the University of Stellenbosch. Prof, good morning. This is a distressing conversation. I can't imagine that the decision must have been easy for the Namibian authorities. Just give me your sense of your understanding of what led them to this point where they felt that to deal with the drought, a cull of this magnitude would be needed.
Thanks very much for having me and on this important issue. Well, if we look at the science behind it, well, let's look at the situation generally. Namibia is in a very significant drought, according to some reports, the worst in 100 years. And I think about over 1 million people in Namibia are facing food insecurity. So that's a really important element to bear in mind. In fact, the drought extends right across southern Africa. So Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, that entire stretch of our region is in severe drought, and about 11 million people are at high risk of food insecurity. So they're part of a much bigger picture. But the decision essentially brings a real conflict between the biodiversity convention that countries have signed and the climate change convention. So we're seeing a real clash or interaction between these two undertakings. And for me, it looks as though there's quite a risk in turning the protected areas of a country, which address biological diversity, into an emergency food resource when climate conditions strike. So that is a new, something that's emerged anew on the landscape, and I don't think we know enough about how to do these trade-offs.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you used that phrase, emergency food resource, because the reports are that some of the game meat will be shared with communities who are in need. As you mentioned there, that hundreds of thousands of people in Namibia are facing food insecurity in the wake of this drought. That's what you mean by emergency food resources.
Indeed. Protected areas have a particular role in the Convention on Biological Diversity. And if you look at the agreements that have been signed, if there is an identified adverse impact on biodiversity, like a drought, the obligation of the countries who are signatories are to monitor and to take, the appropriate action to protect biodiversity, not to use the resource for food. But at the same time, countries face risks to their own populations. And so we now, what I'm trying to say is that this brings these two agreements into juxtaposition, and how do we make the correct choices that do not damage biodiversity while addressing climate risks?
Yeah, that's always that conversation about sustainable development being development that meets the needs of today without compromising future generations and their ability to meet their needs. Lastly, Prof. Majli, how much do we understand about the underlying reasons for the drought in Namibia? Is it cyclical? Is it something that over the years and generations, not just in Namibia but in the region, has come to be expected? Or is it exacerbated by, some of the effects of climate change?
Yes, well, there's no climate event that's not affected by climate change anymore in the world. Every single event is affected. But in this case, we're seeing an El Nino drought, which is a cyclical phenomenon, and which, sadly, in Southern Africa, we don't understand well enough how these cyclical phenomena affect our climate. But because Namibia has warmed by at least a degree in the last 20 to 30 years, it makes that drought even worse. So that's the climate change additionality to the adverse impact. So it's a combination of a natural cyclical event and a climate change event together.
Yeah. Distressing times. Thank you for that input there. That's Professor Guy Majli, who is climate change researcher and acting director of the School of Climate Studies at the University of Stellenbosch.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's have the conversation. Let's see, where do we start? Let's start with your calls. I have Thomas in Newcastle. Thomas, what's on your mind this morning?
Hey, how are you? No. My problem is we are not saying much about what Dr. Ndlozi said yesterday. And this is where the problem, I feel, is lying. The solution to all these shenanigans are happening, people being extorted and all that. The shutting down of the system of procurement that we have in South Africa, instead of departments taking that responsibility.
So you believe that this part of the solution, you agree with Dr. Ndlozi that part of that the solution to the extortion that we are seeing would be the state undertaking works itself as opposed to outsourcing?
It's not part. It is the solution. Trust me, Mr. Lukukan. It is. It's not even part of, because this all started, the communities, we've been feeling this from, I remember living in Newcastle, people were being shot from as early as 2000 over tenders in Newcastle. We are a small town in comparison. That's what was happening.
Sure.
So it's not part of, it is the solution. You close that tap, the water is going to sort itself out, because it's going to just dry up, and no one's going to have the balls to come and say, excuse my French, to come and say, give me the tender, because it's all being done by the government. And that's what we want anyway. That's service delivery.
All right. I've got to thank you for that input. Thomas in Newcastle, they're saying that this calls for an overhaul of how works are undertaken on behalf of government. Rather than relying on tenders, it is better to have a system where government undertakes the works itself.
Good morning, Tulas. Good morning, SAF and listeners. Tulas, when it comes to corruption, we can't say it's the turning of the tide just because of Mtimkudu. How many people are involved in crime, Tulas? How many people are involved in corruption? How many people are have been arrested just because of one person or two, and we start making noise? Oh, come on. How many? Two out of how many? If you put the ratio or you look at the percentage terms, oh, come on, South Africa. Still a lot that needs to be done when it comes to that. Thank you. That is Daniel from eThekwini.
All right. So thank you for that voice note. Let's hear a bit more from you. Oh, okay. Let's go to Vincent. Vincent is in Guyana. And Vincent, you want to talk about South Africans helping to fight crime. Good morning.
We should look for solutions in this crime problem, that which will be meaningful and impactful. One, I suggest, in my view, following the understanding of how most and some of the officials in the police fraternity are so corrupt, should we not be introducing 200 unidentifiable police investigators and just have them on the street, but announce that there's 200 people that are being put out to look for police that are corrupt, and then police should start using their name tags and putting them up there. So a police officer wouldn't know who of the 200 is out there looking for those kind of corrupt people, so that in the event they do an act that is not proper, those people are given all the ammunition and instruments to identify that and then have them fired, so that police starts themselves by not doing
investigating the investigators.
Yes, so that they don't know who exactly will be reporting them should they do anything funny. So that we minimize all these things. But the second one is that let's be specific. Anyone that kills, let's go and build a jail for them in the desert area that we have near Pofada there. Let's just have Pofada as we build a court there for murderers only. And those people stay there, they discuss their issues there, and they know the consequence of murdering means I'm going to Pofada and wait for my case there, and then get to be, yes. So we don't have to mix things and then be specific and target those two things.
Interesting point you make. Yes. Interesting point you make this morning. Thank you very much for that, Vincent. And of course, you saying that we should build a jail for murderers in Pofada in the desert there, it would not suspend the application of our constitution. No matter where you put people that have been sentenced, you would still need to adhere to our constitutional principles. That brings us to 8:31, time for a news update with Ann Musa.
Good morning. Thanks to us in the headlines, the Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Simelane has revealed that money stolen at Postbank included social grants. He confirmed that he's referred the forensic report on governance and financial breaches at the Postbank to the Hawks. The Hawks in Limpopo have seized electronic devices, including laptops, from some municipal managers in the Thulamela municipality in Thohoyandou. And President Cyril Ramaphosa will today address international investors in Beijing, China. He's in China, where he's expected to attend the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation Summit. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A lot of traffic on the Mike 1 this morning. It's been our top story, but it's a change this morning, but net result is still very heavy. There is traffic queuing from Boysons all the way through to Grayston Drive. If you're on your way through Central Joburg to Santon, the traffic is pretty extreme. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. The M2 coming in from Benrose area to the Crown, that stays heavy as well. A lot of traffic on the N3 between the cement factory and Modderfontein Road up in the Edenvale area. The R21 is queuing up reasonably heavily as well as you leave the airport en route to Pretoria. That's in the double lane closure section between Pomona and the Benoni off-ramp. Just check before you travel in the afternoon. The peak hour conditions, it can get really bad. And a crash near the cement factory routing south this morning from Bedfordview into Germiston, staying busy. Durban, a crash near Pavilion Mall. If you're coming in from Pinetown, there's a queue on that run through that gets back towards the Paradise Valley Junction. And Cape Town today, Marine Drive, as we've been mentioning, pretty heavy still. It eased up earlier, but it's all of a sudden got busy again. So there's big traffic out of Tableview through to the Paddocks Racecourse Road, and then from Lagoon Beach you hit queue number 2 along the coast all the way through to the N1 highway. And no traffic lights on Baden-Powell at the N2 bridge. So just a bit of extra caution crossing that junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
It can't be easy being Rassie Erasmus, right? You've got a galaxy of stars to choose from in terms of who you filled.
And one of those stars in that galaxy, as you put it there, Thulas, is Elrich Lowe. He has been knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
And as we wait for Siya Kolisi's arrival, we'll know tomorrow. Unlike the Tuesday announcement that we are familiar with when it comes to the box, Coach Rassie Erasmus has gone with a Thursday announcement. So
keep us waiting.
Keep us waiting to unveil the stars that will face the All Blacks again in the Rugby Championship come this Saturday. Now, Elrich Lowe has been impressing with solid performances in recent games. He's building momentum in the squad. Despite competition from players like Evan Roos and Jasper Visser, Lowe has held his own and feels the team is building something special. He described playing against New Zealand at Ellis Park as his biggest career highlight, especially being part of the bomb squad that helped secure a comeback win. As they head to Cape Town, Lowe is ready to continue making his mark. Soccer now, Bafana head coach Hugo Broos has named Themba Zwane as captain for their upcoming 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers, stepping in for the injured Ronwen Williams. Zwane is a key playmaker. He'll lead the team against Uganda at Orlando Stadium on the 6th of September and then again against South Sudan on the 10th of September. Meanwhile, Stellenbosch FC defender Fawaz Basadin has been making waves not only with his performances but also with growing interest from Kaizer Chiefs. Despite the persistent rumours, Basadin remains focused on his current team. He recently led Stellenbosch to a historic victory over Mamelodi Sundowns in the MTN 8 semi-final. He's earned a well-deserved call-up to Bafana. Speaking about the Chiefs speculation, Basadin reaffirmed his commitment to Stellenbosch.
For me personally, I think it's control what I can control. Obviously, I'm contracted to Stellenbosch. That's where I'm playing. So all I can do is put in good performances week in, week out. I mean, I'm there to do a job. Never mind what's going on around the media. Obviously, it's good to have a club like Chiefs interested in you, but I'm contracted to Stellenbosch and my focus has been there by Stellenbosch and just to put in good performances week in and week out.
Tennis action. Francis Tiafoe and Taylor Fritz will set up an All-American semi-final at the US Open, with victories guaranteeing the host countries a men's finalist in its Grand Slam tournament for the first time since 2006. The 20th seed Tiafoe made it to the final four, and that was at Flushing Meadows for the second time in 3 years, when his quarterfinal opponent Grigor Dimitrov stopped playing because of an injury. Tiafoe was leading 6-3, 7-6, 6-3, 4-1 when Dimitrov retired from the match. Now, the match was delayed for nearly a minute when an insect invaded the court, and that was in the second set. And now the world of track and field is about to witness a historic showdown as two of the sport's most electrifying athletes, Karsten Warholm and Armand Mondo Duplantis, prepare to go head-to-head in a 100-meter sprint. What started as a light-hearted exchange during a training session at the Monaco Diamond League has evolved into a must-see event set to take place later today in Zurich. Here's Karsten Warholm.
When the handshake goes down, it always has to happen. You know, if one of them is pushing, and I think both for me and Mondo, this makes sense. You know, I think even though I want to trash talk the out of this thing, I still feel like I have to say there is a big nerve in this competition. Yeah. I've never seen him sprint 100 meters. He's never seen me sprint 100 meters. We don't even know ourselves. You know, we decided we're not going to train together before this. We just want to see it tomorrow.
Karsten Warholm has been receiving advice from Usain Bolt ahead of the Mondo Duplantis showdown. More sport, that's here on SFM around 12:30. For the morning brief, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
And for that, Ndauling Lechela joins us now for another update. And Ndauling, yesterday the GDP numbers out for the second quarter of the year. Not a massive improvement, but we'll take it.
Yeah. You know what? I said, let me leave some of the good news for the last segment, right? The local economy expanding by 0.4% in the second quarter, escaping a technical recession and recovering from a 0.1% contraction in the first quarter. Now, growth was in line with expectations as economists pegged growth of between 0.2 to 0.4%. Interestingly, the rebound coincides with the period where the country had no load shedding. So it was expected also that it would give, the economy a bigger boost, but I guess that didn't happen, but it was welcomed from most industries. In terms of contribution, the finance, real estate and business services sectors increased 1.3% in the second quarter to contribute 0.3 percentage points. The electricity, gas and water industry increased by 3.1%, contributing 0.1 percentage points. Now, Nedbank economists say growth was driven by renewed domestic spending as lower inflation lifted confidence, household purchasing power, and real incomes. Economists further said the worst part of the economic slump is likely over and that things should get better gradually by the end of this year and then improve more noticeably in 2025 and 2026. Optimism around the local economy has been widespread, with a number of international and local institutions upping their forecast. Most recently, American bank Citi raised its SA growth forecast to 1.2% for this year and 2% for 2025. Local lenders, ABSA and Standard Bank, upping their forecast to growth of 1.1% in 2024. The IMF, however, leaving their outlook unchanged, paying growth of 0.9% this year.
Sure, we'll take any bit of good news, and Dowling, certainly in as far as that economy is concerned, and those factors that need to fall into place for the economy to start performing, our logistics, our energy situation as well. In company news, you're looking at Aspen Pharmacare, and there's a financial boost for them.
That's right. They have received a close to 10 billion rand loan from a group of investors led by the World Bank. The funding will be used to further Aspen's plans when it comes to developing medicines and vaccines for the continent. In terms of vaccines, Aspen says it has been approached to manufacture the Mpox vaccine. This, of course, comes as South Africa and the continent at large scramble for vaccines as cases rise. Now, Aspen CEO Stephen Sard said they would only commit to manufacturing shots if there was assurance around volumes. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Aspen says it invested heavily in making vaccines at its factory in Gqeberha, hoping to sell its own version of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in Africa. But its plans were unsuccessful as demand for the vaccine waned across the continent. And so it says it's taking a more cautious approach this time around. Meanwhile, another local player, BioVac, is also open to manufacturing shots. In a Bloomberg interview, the group's CEO said it's just waiting for more intimate discussions with companies such as Bavarian Nordic, a Danish company that is one of the few firms with an approved Mpox dose. Africa is currently receiving Mpox vaccines from the World Health Organization, with Nigeria receiving the first batch last week.
And the JSE opening in about 19 minutes. What kind of a trading day are we looking at?
So local markets are set to start the day on the back foot following international peers as that global sell-off gains momentum. Company news still dominating though here at home. We have earnings out from Woolworths and Cashbuild, so traders will be waking up to that. On the currency front, the rand pulling back and edging closer to the 18 rand mark from highs of 17.60. It's currently trading at 17.99 to the dollar. Moving over to the U.S., futures downbeat, falling into negative territory on the back of factory activity data that sparked concerns about the health of the U.S. economy. Meanwhile, in Asia, markets on track to wrap up the day in the red as investors hold off on making any bets ahead of the U.S. jobs data print out on Friday. This will provide some insight on how the labor market is performing, which will then influence some of the Fed's thinking as policymakers prepare for a monetary policy meeting later this month.
All right, Ndauling, have yourself a fantastic day. And Ndauling Lechela there with your business update for this morning. This is the Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
All right, so it's time for us now to do what we call explain and verify, right? We like to keep each other in check. Sometimes we all make, in the height of the debate, we will say things and then we'll need to take a step back and say, hang on, what are the actual facts of how this works? What is the truth? Where does the path of truth go? In this instance, yesterday, we were talking about the results coming out of Transnet and the losses that they made, and a lot of you making inputs, including this caller who was calling for the former directors of Transnet to be declared delinquent directors. Take a listen.
The level of distraction that you brought to Transnet is ignored. The level of distraction. I remember there was a time where there was that lady from SAA who was declared delinquent, because they said she didn't perform. But Portia Debbie, nobody talks about it. All we talk about is how Transnet is failing, but we forget to mention the reasons why.
So you hold her particularly responsible for the situation that Transnet finds itself in?
Yes, I was inside Transnet when she came in. I know what Transnet was before, and I know what it is after her. You understand the decision making, the level of incompetence, and then if we now start going the what you call this. We say no, she was brought in for the distraction of Transnet so that we can give the private sector competition to come in. That's what other people say.
Sure.
But now, I just wanted your help to find out how can I go about declaring her a delinquent, like a normal man like me. So,
okay. So in case you missed it, that was one of the callers talking specifically about Portia Derby, who was the CEO at Transnet. I do need to put on the record that we did reach out to Portia Derby, offering her a right of reply. We've not heard back from her, and if she does come back, we will, because she was subject to some serious criticism during the show yesterday. Let's bring in then Outer's Wayne Duvenage to weigh in on this. And of course, Outer, having been at the heart of the leading cases now, case authority in as far as the process of having a director declared a delinquent director is concerned. You'll remember that case that involved Dudumieni and at SAA at the time. Wayne, good morning to you. So just broadly, This process comes out of the Companies Act and the requirements there for directors to always act in the best interests of the company and exercise their fiduciary duties. But what is the threshold from your experience and that case that you were involved in for a person to be declared a delinquent director?
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice to be there. This is a great topic and a very important one because it's a very underutilized method of holding people to account, especially in state-owned entities where they have done a lot of damage and brought these companies down to their knees, and we as the public suffer. But it applies to all companies. So there's a section in that Companies Act, section I think 162, that speaks to removing directors from these companies who bring them into, disrepute. They've contravened the law, basically. They've abused their positions as directors and inflicted harm on the company through this gross negligence. So there's a number of avenues that you can come at, but first of all, you need to have standing in the matter. And normally, it's a company that will go after a previous director who has done this damage and have them declared delinquent so that they don't. And the reason for this is you don't want these individuals popping up as directors in other companies and doing the same thing. And we've seen this very often. And sadly, it is hardly utilized because companies and businesses are only too happy to see the back of these directors who've been acting delinquently, who've been giving them a headache on the boards and so forth, and they take no action. And it's very frustrating for us as civil society, especially in state-owned institutions where we see these individuals popping up. They move on, And a classic case, for instance, Andile Nongogo, the CEO of Services CETA, lots of wrongdoing, just simply was removed from there, and then he finds himself heading up the NSFAS. We kept on applying the pressure, and eventually he was dismissed. He's still not declared delinquent. And the question we have for the departments is why are they not going after these individuals and having them declared delinquent? And this is a failing in our system.
You're saying that it's an underutilized mechanism, but I imagine that you say that because you find it to be effective. Why is it the stick in instances where, the effective stick in instances where, there seems to be no other way of consequence management? Why does it matter if someone is declared a delinquent director?
I tell you why it matters. So firstly, you've got other consequences. You've got the rule of law, so you've got the police, so people can lay charges against individuals who've been acting corruptly or breaking the law. Or you have dismissal, that's another consequence. People get just dismissed. But why this is an important one, it is a costly one and not an easy one to apply. But why it's important is that, people who operate at that level, who are on the boards of companies, have a very important role to play. They need to ensure that governance takes place, and if we have people that are operating on boards that do not apply the rules and do it properly, and they keep moving because they find themselves on other boards. So, for instance, Dudu Mnyeni, when we took her on, she was on a number of boards, creating havoc, and lots of them with powers granted to her by people higher up. They can swing the entire expenditure of organizations and have them collapse. That's what happens. So you need to remove these individuals from the ability to serve on boards, any board thereafter, if they are delinquent. If we don't, as we've seen, they find their way onto other boards because people in higher places, especially in government, will utilize these individuals for nefarious activities to promote an agenda, and they keep pushing them onto other boards, and when they found wanting, they just take them out and move them onto another board. It's this merry-go-round of directorships that we've got to stop. And the only way you can do that is having them declared delinquent, and when CIP is notified, and those individuals now apply to be a board member somewhere else. Remember, board members make big decisions and have oversight on operations. The CIPC says, sorry, this individual is declared delinquent. They may not serve on that board. That's why it's important.
I've got to thank you for those insights there. That's Outa's Wayne Duvenage weighing in on the process around getting people to be declared delinquent directors. And I wonder, as he was talking, I started wondering to what extent it would be possible for organizations at local level even to actually start using this mechanism a bit more, as we all seek and strive for better accountability, where you are able to prove the case that this person did not carry out their duties with the necessary skill and care and in the best interests of entities, including those entities that belong to municipalities.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow through Joburg on your way to Sandton this morning. There is literally traffic all the way from Boysons right through to Greyston Drive. So just make sure you've got time to get through that backlog. The M2 from Benrose coming into the Crown interchange stays heavy as well. Roadworks causing delays leaving the airport. 2 lanes closed as you approach the R23 Benoni exit. That is a park back through Pomona and back towards Atlas Road. So that's fairly heavy. And delays both ways to the William Mandela off-ramp on the N1 highway. The lights down there have been off for the longest time. Driving into Durban, when we last checked in, was a crash at Pavilion Mall. It's still there. The N3 backlogging from Paradise Valley. So if you're coming from Pinetown, you might want to just route through Cowie's Hill and head across through Westville on the M13. Come back onto the N3 at Sherwood and you'll bypass that nicely. Some queues as well at Subaya on your way towards King Shaka International Airport, causing delays. And Cape Town today, very busy on the N1. We're queuing up really from about N1 City in the Parow Goodwood area. From that point all the way through towards the city centre. Kuberg Road and Marine Drive are both heavy as you try to get into the N1, and the N7 going north, still under a bit of pressure leaving the Goodwood area with queues from Frans Conradi up towards the Bosmonsdam Road off-ramp. Komiki Road out of Komiki up passing Massey on your way through to Capri Drive. That's quite slow as well for this time on a Wednesday. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Comoros and the Gambia have a huge clash for 90 minutes in the AFCON qualifier. Both nations are optimistic for the significant 3 points. Yet the question remains, who wants it the most? This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Comoros up against the Gambia on Wednesday, 4 September at 5 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Let's go to Chris in Durban. Chris, good morning. You want to talk about municipalities and accountability lines?
We said we like to use words to the point that they lose meaning. We've been talking about consequence management. Unless we clear the lines of accountability, we are not going to be able to ensure that there is consequence management. Let me make an example. Not all mayors are executive mayors. And some people where they are executive councils don't even report to, they don't feel that they are only accountable to their political parties. Let's take Etegwini for an example. An ANC mayor thinks that he only accountable to the ANC, not to council. So I believe that to make changes, we also need to clear the clutter along the accountability line. So there's clear performance agreements, and people need to be accountable for what they've promised to do. Yeah. And in that way, we are only going to be able to make the changes.
Yeah, if you're not clear about who's responsible for what, how can you hold anyone accountable? Thank you for that input this morning. Let's talk to Jacob, who is out in Witbank. And Jacob, you want to talk about training centers this morning?
Yes, Mr. Thulasizwe, congratulations firstly on your new position, and you are kicking it very well. Yes, I actually wanted to comment on what Andrew said. I think it was your earlier caller on that point of training centers, who said that the qualifications are just papers. I just want to draw this picture. I am a 31-year-old male who has his own apartment, staying with wife and kid. I'm working and I'm taking this as a privilege simply because of the same paper that Andrew was referring to. I am working with I call this gentleman my father because there's a 20-year gap between me and him. Who doesn't have this paper? And because of the same paper, I'm getting a better treatment in terms of respect, in terms of how people look at me when I walk inside the same room, whereby I learned and I am skillful from learning from this same gentleman who doesn't have the same paper. So, Andrew, I don't know what he's trying to push, but to say it's just the paper is not true. That paper will open.
By that, Jacob, is your reference to the qualifications and certificates from cities
yes, from
and trade
cities.
schools? Is that what you have? You are saying that they have value. They're not just a piece of paper.
They have quite a big value. I'm a feature antenna by profession, and I'm saying based on that paper, I am where I am because of it. I can move from companies to company because of the same paper. Before they even give you an opportunity for an interview, that paper will be necessary. So I don't know when someone says we should go back to the old system. You know, when someone says that, they tell you that the old system, they were benefiting from it, and they are part of the minority that benefited from that. You will never get a 50-year-old grandfather who will tell you that he's a qualified fitter. They are not qualified, yet they know the job. And because they don't have the paper, they are not being treated the same. They're still being treated as someone who doesn't know what they are doing.
All right.
So
Thank you for calling in. Jacob out in Witbank, they're talking training centers. I think I've got an inkling of who this Mvusi is that wants to talk about agriculture and the issue of Paralympics. Good morning, Mvusi in the Eastern Cape.
My brother, welcome back home.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Two quick things, man. On behalf of all the runners, can we please have Medal Monday on Monday?
That will only be reintroduced when I get back to proper running, Mvusi. I saw what you were saying. It's not happening until I'm running and I'm, back fully fit.
We must push you back to the road, man. the second thing that I want to say is, I appreciate how you approach the market report this morning. And I want to challenge you guys to include information about sectors like agriculture, because that is very key in all of us understanding the performance of our economy, so that when GDP results come, we already know how the economy has been performing, who has been moving here and there on the trading board. Thanks a lot, man. All the best for the show.
Mvusi, thank you so much for that. That's Mvusi out in the Eastern Cape, challenging us to highlight more the role of sectors such as agriculture in as far as the market reports are concerned, and I fully agree. Dowling, we have a challenge from Mvusi out in the Eastern Cape. I don't know about Medal Monday. Until I'm back to fully running marathons, then we can talk a bit later. Lastly, Andile in George, you want to talk about municipalities. Good morning.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Kunjani Khotman?
Ngiyaphila kunjani baba?
Kuhle mhlekazi man. I just wanted to make a comment that year in, year out, when the audit has been done on the municipality, we've always been told about these municipalities with bad audits and all those things. I just wanted to propose that why is it that if a municipality has a bad audit or has mismanaged public funds and all those things, let it be regardless of the election period or tenure that they are supposed to be there, there ought to be some form of impeachment or anything of that sort, because now we realize that these people continuously do the same thing over and over again, but they remain there because they're elected. Can the Electoral Act be amended maybe to provide a section which will make it possible for those municipalities who mismanage funds for their executive mayors to be removed summarily without waiting for these by-elections and all those things.
All right, I've got to thank you for that. There are mechanisms that are in place, such as impeachment, as you say, that also applies at municipal level, as well as votes of no confidence, of course, also remain an option. And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS CAR to 43187 now.
In our top stories, Postbank suffers massive financial losses and overnight Russian attacks on a Ukrainian city. Good morning. The Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Thulasizwe has revealed that money stolen at Postbank included social grants. He's confirmed that he's referred the forensic report on governance and financial breaches at the Postbank to the Hawks. The report shows Postbank suffered financial losses valued at nearly 89 million rand due to fraudulent activities that happened between 2021 and 2022. Malatsi presented the report before Parliament yesterday.
We have now referred the report to the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation in a bid to ensure that those who are responsible for these crimes are brought to book. What makes this cash theft even more repugnant is that some of this money was stolen from vulnerable social grant beneficiaries and ordinary South Africans who were saving for a better future. We will use the full might of the law to fight anyone who dares rob citizens. I expect decisive action to ensure that public entities are run ethically and with integrity for the benefit of our citizens and not criminals.
Police Minister Senzo Mchunu has highlighted situations in which extortionists are targeting some recipients of social grants and road accident funds. He says 73% of crimes committed in the country, including extortion, happen in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. Mchunu delivered his statement in the National Assembly yesterday.
In Free State, the target of extortionists include pensioners and people who receive RAF. Generally, there's more extortions going on in the communities than meet the eye. This requires more intelligent operations on our side. And we know we have to strengthen intelligence, we have to improve intelligence, we have to find information on our own in terms of profiling these criminals.
The Hawks in Limpopo have seized electronic devices, including laptops, from some municipal managers in the Thulamela municipality in Thohoyandou. In a statement, the provincial Hawk spokesperson Litunya Murwa says the devices are believed to be part of necessary investigation of alleged fraud and corruption in the municipality. No arrests have been made. President Cyril Ramaphosa has called on investors to consider South Africa as their investment country of choice. He has just addressed international investors in Beijing, China. Ramaphosa is in China, where he is expected to attend the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation Summit. In the past few days, he has been engaging Chinese companies to encourage them to invest in South Africa. And finally, Russia has carried out another night of attacks on Ukraine, a day after a missile strike killed 51 people in the city of Poltava. Officials in the western city of Lviv say at least 2 people were killed and around 20 more injured during an airstrike earlier this morning. Explosions were also heard over the capital Kyiv as air defenses tried to down Russian missiles. Alexandra Maresko is a Ukrainian member of Parliament.
So far we know that Kyiv was bombarded. I was